God had a plan. 6,000 years ago, the prophet Adam, who started the Adamic cycle, the first manifestation of the cycle, declared on the first page of the Bible that God created everything, the entire universe. Pertaining to our solar system, our Earth in the sun and the moon and the stars, this started about 4 billion and a half, 500 million years ago. And he created in 6 geographical time periods. The first being about 1,250,000,000 years, the second 850 million years, the third 650 million years, the fourth 450 million years, the fifth 250 million years, and then we're getting into the sixth. We're in the 6th period. We're coming to the end of the 6 days of creation. And this ends with the coming of 1,000 years of peace. 6,000 years ago, the prophet Adam declared that God was going to make man in his image. Before that, man was in the image of the animal. He wasn't thinking in the abstract. He had 2 eyes, 2 ears, a nose, mouth, arms and legs. It was the same as the animal. But man, at the time of Adam, had evolved to the place where he could start realizing there is an invisible God that permeated the entire space, and he surrounded everything that he created, and he himself is not surrounded. But we are more concerned with that of the starting of the cycle or the dispensation of Adam that lasts for 6,000 years. It started 4000 BC and will come to an end in the year of 2000 AD. We only have about 12 or 13 years until the complete end of the Adamic cycle. And Peter, in the Epistle of Peter, he says that each day is as 1,000 years. And these 6 days, or 6 creational days, started with Adam and it ends in the year of 2000. And he said it would end with a great catastrophe. He said that the world and its works would be burned up. He said it would be similar to the time of Noah. One time he said the world was destroyed with a flood. He said now it's being saved up for the destruction of ungodly men with fire. The first destruction destroyed the ungodly men with a flood. But this time it's with fire. And we're coming to the age of the fire, the destruction, to get ready for the 7th day, the Sabbath, or the 1,000 years of peace. We are concerned about the prophecies, and we've gone through some of the prophecies with the coming of several manifestations of God. But God's plan, starting with Adam, is that he was going to send a series of prophets or manifestations. And he says, let us make man in our image. Our meaning like he was, Adam, a manifestation. And as God is invisible and he pervades the entire universe, God in his essence is not knowable. And what all we know about God is the thought of God that's revealed in a revelation. And John explains that in the first part of his gospel. He says, in the beginning was the Logos. The Logos was with God, and the Logos was God. And the 14th verse he says, and then he became flesh and dwelt among us. That is, the thought of God becomes evident in the revelation of a man, flesh, and dwells among us. The only way that God talks to us, and not in a loud voice in the sky, but through an intermediary. And Jesus testified to that. So here we have the Adamic cycle. Now when God started this cycle to make man in his image, he had a plan, just like this house. When it was, before it was constructed, before they took a shovel full of dirt to make the foundation or the basement, there was a plan drawn up by an architect according to the owner's thoughts. And of course the owner was God Almighty. And the architect of this plan was Adam, and of course it was put into a building. Just like today they put the plans in blueprints. This was put into one of the biggest buildings in the world. The entire plan of God for the 6,000 years is encased within the Great Pyramid of Giza. It's the first and the oldest of the 7 ancient wonders of the world, and it's the only one that is still remaining. The pyramid has mystified peoples down through the ages. People have a lot of concocted ideas of what the pyramid was about, and some of them wrote foolish things on what it is, but most of them had at least a thread of truth about the pyramid. We have historians such as Strabo and Herodotus that gives us some glimpse of the pyramid and its history. But we're more interested in the significance of the pyramid. And although there has been great men that have examined the pyramid and has come up with some of the answer, yet the complete answer was not revealed until this very time, when the one that fulfills the prophecies for the establisher of the Baha'i faith, when he had the stone with 7 eyes before him, revealed the remaining concepts of the pyramid. And thus, as he is the Lamb with 7 eyes and 7 horns, he breaks the 7 seals, and in breaking the 7 seals, he gives a proof of the 7 manifestations of God that came before the Bab and Baha'u'llah, as well as proving that the Bab and Baha'u'llah are the promised ones of God. And this is all encased in the Great Pyramid of Giza. And now, to give the Pyramid of Giza credence, just like when we started giving the proofs for a manifestation, the name, address, date, and profession, and we showed how it was that this was God's plan, the golden rod of criteria to determine who is one sent by God or not. We applied it to Jesus, and we found that Jesus fulfilled this prophecy. He has prophesied a name, he has prophesied in the date in which he's come, the address where you'd find him, and his mission. And then we applied this to Baha'u'llah, and then we applied it to the Joshua, or the return of Jesus of the Lamb with 7 eyes, 7 horns, or the 7th angel, or the knight on the white horse. All of these are the same person. So with the coming of the 7th angel, who is to establish the kingdom of God on earth that Baha'u'llah brought, he was given the wisdom, not of himself being a prophet, but that he was given 7 eyes to look into the religions to see the true meanings of these. And of course, while he had the stone with 7 eyes before him, he broke the code of the pyramid. And tonight, or today, we are about to get into some of the great history and the meaning of the pyramid. But first, we must give it credence. And as believability is due to authenticity, that is, authenticity is the criteria of believability. And that is, unless something is authentic, we can make up a big story about it, you know what I mean? And we could bunk up a lot of people, just like the churches are doing today. We are not in that type of a game. We don't have anything to sell, so there's no reason of trying to bunk somebody, you know. We're not going to collect any money for any of this. None of us are making a living off of it. In fact, we use all of our substance and our lives and our energies and the monies that we do have that we earn by the sweat of our brow, we use it in promoting the cause of God, rather than going out and panhandling from the populace for funds. We're not beggars. We're not crying for, give us some money so that we can live real good. All we're trying to do is to point out what God has made, and how everything that we have in the world today was according to the plan that God had made at the very time of Adam, 6,000 years ago. The pyramid was built about 500 years, and we will get into the dates of these things specifically as we go along, by the architect Enoch. Enoch was 7 generations from Adam, and it means of the father of the house of Hanok. The Enoch means the phoenix bird, or the phoenix is the mythical bird that lives for centuries and goes in the fire and dies. The technician, or the one that actually was over the construction of the pyramid, was Tubal-Cain, the son of Zillah-Cain. Tubal-Cain was 7 generations from Adam through Adam's son Cain. Enoch was the son of Adam, or the descendant of Adam, 7 generations, through Adam's son Seth. Seth was the architect that made out the blueprint, or the plan for the building of the pyramid. And he is called Imhotep in Egypt. And it says that Imhotep came from the east and built the pyramid. Tubal-Cain in the Bible says that he was the artificer of all metals, including iron. Well, this was supposed to be back in the Stone Age. But Tubal-Cain was an artificer of all metals. And he had some of the tools that he used tungsten, chisels, and things like this. And some of these tools are in the museum in London that were found in the pyramid. So this was, these people had came from a great civilization before the time of Adam, and they knew some of these things. But the biggest part of what we have in the Adamic cycle is through the divine revelation, which made it all possible. And the pyramid was so constructed that the technicians of today, the great contractors and builders, say that they cannot duplicate it with its perfections. So perfect was this structure that, for instance, the blocks, which weigh several tons, were put so close together that we can't find the seam between them. And the cement that was used is invisible. They can't find the cement, and they can't break the blocks apart. They can break the blocks, but at the seams they can't make them come apart because they're so strongly bonded together. And the precision, as we will get to see as we go into this, is so perfect that we can't match it today. It is up until the 20th century, it was the biggest building in the world. However, it is still the biggest building in the world in mass. That is one made by man. There's enough blocks in the pyramid to make a wall 3 feet high, 3 feet wide, all the way from Los Angeles to New York and then back to Phoenix, Arizona. Or to make a wall 3 feet wide, 10 feet high, all the way around the country of France, or to build all the cathedrals of Great Britain. So great is this pyramid. We just can't undertake such a job today with its perfection. The pyramid was built for several reasons. One is that there was going to be 2 great destructions. Adam had a vision that the world would be destroyed twice. And this is told us by Strobel, one of the historians. The first time he said it was going to be done with a flood, and the last time would be with fire. And as it was getting the time for the great flood, Adam was alive at the time of Enoch, who was 7 generations from Adam, and it was time to put this in this plan of Adam that was probably drawn on something into a building. And so the purpose of it to survive the flood. It says 2 buildings were built, one of brick and the other of stone. We know the one of stone, it was built in Egypt, and it exists today. But the one of brick undoubtedly didn't survive the flood. And in the Bible, on the chapter 19 of Isaiah, the 19th chapter, the 19th verse, he says, in that day there will be an altar to God in the land of Egypt, in the center of the land of Egypt, and at the borders thereof. In the center of the land of Egypt is where the Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt, which were two separate nations, became united. And this is the center of Egypt. And it says that the borders thereof is at the border of northern Egypt and southern Egypt. And he says, will be a pillar and a light, or a pillar and a witness to the Lord of hosts in that day. And the Lord of hosts pertains to the revelation of Baha'u'llah. So the witness of the Great Pyramid is to show the plan of God for the people today so they can see what God has been up to. All we have is a muddled type of jigsaw puzzle being put together by the various clergies of the world. They have the asinine idea that God took some dirt and put it together, and like a mud man or something, and he blew on it and it became a living being 6,000 years ago. And this, of course, is asinine. It's not in accordance to how God does things. God created me, and he didn't do that with me. The way he created me was the sperm of my father and the ovum of my mother come together in my mother's uterus, and it was a single cell, was so small that the eye couldn't see it, and it evolved. But he created me. It didn't say the method that he used to do it in the Bible. It just said that God created man, and now he's going to create him in his image. And he starts out with this plan to do so by sending various teachers to the world. And this is the most important thing to us today. But like I said, we need to give it credence. How do we know that what we're talking about is right? And the way that we can tell this is that we have some of the scientific aspects of the Great Pyramid, which is that it tells us all about the facts of our world and our relationship to the sun and the moon and to the stars to show its credence. I'm only going to go through a few of these. The first one is the pyramid or polar inch. And the pyramid or polar inch is 11/10,000ths larger than the British inch or our inch. And that is because the British or our inch was put on a piece of teak wood by the British, and in 300 years later it shrunk 11/10,000ths of an inch. But it came from the original inch at the time of the building of the pyramid, and it was the pyramid. And how this pyramid inch came about, it was the polar diameter of the Earth divided by 500 million segments is equal to the pyramid inch. And we have this here on our diagram. Here we take the diameter of the Earth, 500 segments of this gives us the pyramid inch. So the first thing is that the pyramid inch is authentic because it is taken from the diameter of the Earth. Now, how did these people know the diameter of the Earth? When the French come up with the metric system, when they measured the diameter of the Earth, they were off by quite a bit, and the metric system therefore will be junked because it's not in conformity to the Earth itself. Where the inch, which we use in America and the British use, is authentic because it's one of 500 million segments of the Earth's diameter. The second is pi. That is, the value of pi is also found in the Great Pyramid. And the value of pi, the pyramid, is twice the height of the pyramid, which is 5,813 inches is the height of the pyramid, and you double it, and you get 36,524,000, which is move your decimal point, which is the 314,159 plus is pi. So we have here the pyramid giving us the value of pi. Well, now it was just in the last century or two that the mathematicians was able to come up with the value of pi. Why didn't they discover it sooner when these people knew it? They put it in the pyramid, but we didn't know the value of pi or that it was in the pyramid until we discovered it. And all these things in the pyramid, the diameter of the earth and everything else are in the pyramid, but it's in the last century or two that these things have come to light with scientific study and measurement. But they were in the pyramid, showing that God knew the dimensions of the earth that he created. And he knew the value of pi. So then it says the distance of the earth to the sun. And this is another factor of the Great Pyramid. Here we have the convergence, the 90 degrees and 90 degrees, and we have the center of the pyramid coming from the two edges of its base, focusing on the sun, which makes it 92,517,153 miles, or no, pyramid inches, and which are, and each inch represents a mile. That makes it 92 million miles, and which is the mean distance from the earth to the sun. So how did the pyramid builders know this? Because the architect was a man of God, Enoch, and the manifestation of God, Adam, taught Enoch. So this is why it's in the Great Pyramid. We have another thing. First of all, this 92,517,153 pyramid miles from the earth, this figure correlates the pyramid by multiplying its height times 10 to the fourth power by dividing it by 2 times pi. I mean, this is a more technical explanation of this that I just told you. I've made it in simpler forms. All right? The solar year is found in many places, and it is given 365.242465 days. The solar year is taken from the base of the pyramid. Here we have it here. Now here we have the solar year. It is the outside from corner to corner, from corner to corner, is the solar year. And it is 36,524,000.2465 divided by 100 makes 365.2465 days. The pyramid is not a complete square, but it has it is an indentation. The sidereal year goes into the indentation and it goes across here and comes back out. The sidereal year is different from the solar year. The solar year is the length of time it takes the earth to revolve around the sun and getting back to its starting point in relation to the sun. The sidereal year is the length of time it takes for the earth to revolve around the sun and get back to its place where it started in relation to a fixed star. And there are 6 seconds different between the two, and this is given in the pyramid. The animalistic year is going all the way into the point, and this is the animalistic year, which is the difference between the two, and this gives us the precession of the equinox. They have the distance from corner to corner and corner to corner, and you times 2, and you get 25,826 years. That is, it takes this length of time for the 6 seconds between the, say like today, we were starting to figure out the Earth's rotation around the sun back to next year. there'll be 6 seconds difference between the solar and the sidereal year. And then the next year there would be 12-second difference. Next one would be 18. It'd take 25,000 years for those seconds to get back where they're both correlating again. And this is found in the Great Pyramid. These are very, very scientific things that weren't known 100 or so years ago. These things were known today, but it was given in the Great Pyramid. And the purpose of this being in the Great Pyramid is to give credence to this building. Okay? We have to take this building as in its perfection. If it can give this data, certainly it can give the spiritual message as well. So we are we're just going through these things here, not that it's important to me or you, because we already know these things now, but the people didn't know it in the past ages. But God had to put in the Great Pyramid to show that God is in command and that He's given His plan here, so that the people can know it and accept it. The weight of the earth. The earth, the pyramid weighs 52,725 tons. That's the pyramid weight. The earth weighs, this is astronomical. It's probably, it's 52,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000 tons. Okay. That's how much the earth weighs. And it's the 52,725 tons of the pyramid is equal to the 52,725, so many hundred zeros, you know what I mean? To show that the pyramid knew the weight of the earth. The mean temperature of earth, this is given as 20 degrees Celsius or 68 degrees Fahrenheit. It is the constant temperature of the king's chamber in the pyramid. That is the king's chamber of the pyramid is the same as the mean temperature of the earth. That is divided between the equator and the North Pole and so forth, you know. The longest land contact parallel and meridians. The pyramid is located at the axis of the longest land contact parallel and the longest land contact meridian. These are consecutively 29 degrees, 58 minutes and 50 seconds, north latitude. 31 degrees, 4 minutes, 60 seconds east latitude. That is, it is the convergence of the longest land mass in the earth and the longest meridian. You know, the two of them come together at the exact place in Egypt. The cardinal points of the compass. The pyramid's 4 sides face true north. True south, true east, and true west. The pyramid divides the northern hemisphere. It divides the eastern and western civilizations. Languages. All original language are written in the direction of the Great Pyramid. For instance, the west people write left to right, and the east people write right to left. Everybody writes towards the pyramid. It comes together. East writes towards the pyramid, and the right towards the pyramid. Area of the sides of the pyramid. All 4 sides are of equal area, exactly 5 1/4 acres each. The direction of the North Pole. The descending passageway points directly to the North Pole, showing the polar star at the time of the construction, Draconis and Polaris, the polar star of today. Draconis was the one that was at the polar star when the pyramid was built, so we get an idea when it was built. The direction of the foundation star of the universe. The scored line in the descending passageway points to Aslan, and we have that up here. to Aslan. No, there's Draconus, and here is Aslan of the Pleiades. The direction of the foundation star of the universe. The scored line in the descending passage points towards Aslan, the foundation star of the universe, so known since the time of the ancients. The direction of the polar star and the constellation Orion, the King's Chamber, has two air shafts. One points to the polar star, the other two points to Orion. I don't know if we have that in this drawing here. It's in one of the drawings. The phoenix bird. The myth of the phoenix is tied to the pyramid through its architect, Enoch. The word phoenix means father of the house of Enoch. The trigonometric tables, these are found through the triangles and angles of the structure having a base of 90 degrees equaling 0, all other angles progressing from it. So we have here some very, very interesting scientific facts. And how did we happen to start knowing these scientific facts? Well, Al-Mu'min in the 8th century AD, who was one of the caliphs of Islam, was establishing a book of knowledge. And he was ransacking the world to find this knowledge. At this time, the Western world, Christianity, was in the Dark Ages. And the Dark Ages were so dark that there was no written history for 200 years of Europe. They lived in squalor, disease, poverty, and ignorance. And this was due to the corrupt priesthood of Christianity that looked upon learning and science as unclean. They went in the libraries and took the books of science out, put them in a pile and burned them and tore down the libraries. And thus Europe descended in the Dark Ages. At the same time, Islam was seeking for enlightenment. And Al-Mu'min built the first university in the world. And he called it the House of Knowledge. And he ransacked the world, going to all the different places, to India and to China. And every place he could find, he heard that there was any type of knowledge, he went and investigated. Somebody told him that there was a great store of knowledge in the pyramid, that there was maps and charts, and that there was great wealth in the pyramid. So he started to get into the pyramid, and he couldn't find the opening, although it had a hinged opening on the north side. He couldn't find the opening, and he scaled up that 5 1/4 acres all over that north side, and he got a place where he thought the opening should be, but he was some way off. And he tunneled into the pyramid, starting about here. It isn't on this chart. He started in here, and he tunneled down 70 feet, down about here. And it was a very, very hard. Although it was limestone blocks, they couldn't do it with chisels. The chisels would all break and wear out in a hurry. So what they did, they heated the rocks with torches, and then they threw cold vinegar on them, and they cracked them, and then they hit them with battering rams. And it took months to go the 70 feet. And he was about ready to give up when a rock dropped right above him. And so they said, well, the pathway must be right above them, so they tunneled upward, and they come out somewhere in here, and they found this. It was from this point here to this point here, there was 10 big blocks of limestone, weighing about 2 tons each, lining this passageway. Well, once they found the passageway, they went up here and they found the opening, but they couldn't pull the blocks out this way because this was a bottleneck. They wouldn't slide out. And you wonder why I bring this point into it, because some people get the concocted idea that this was a tomb, that this was built for the tomb of a pharaoh. Well, it was built for a tomb of a pharaoh, and this was the only opening. How did they get the body out if it was blocked? with 10 blocks that wouldn't come out this way. You know, they usually rob a grave at night. And it took him months. He broke them up and then hauled them out here, another one out, to get them blocks all the way in order to examine the pyramid. After he found that he got these out of the way, he found this block here, and this had red granite. And he started chiseling at that, and it wouldn't chisel away at all. So they dug around that in these lime blocks, and they came into here, and they found 12 blocks in here. See? And they had to do the same thing here. So how'd they get that body out, if there was a body in there? Al-Mummum found this box empty. There'd never been a body in it. Never was built for a tomb. But some pyramidologists and some people get the idea, because there's about 70 pyramids in Egypt, all built after this one, that were tombs of kings. But this is different from all the rest. All the rest of them only had chambers underneath the base pavement. See? This is the only one that had chambers above the base pavement. And the other pyramids, they're just shells and then filled with rubble. It was something real easy to do. Just pouring rubble, like you pour stones in a sack, you know? Where this one is a masonry that is very highly crafted and put together. So the reason that these stones were here is so that we can prove that there was never a body in there. God went through all kinds of trouble just to prove this. Because if it was the tomb of a pharaoh, why, it wouldn't give it any credits. But nevertheless, early pyramidologists, when they discovered this, they called this the king's chamber. And they thought that the king was supposed to be buried there, and they called this the queen's chamber. But they named this one right, because this is the king's chamber. It's the great king that establishes the kingdom of God on this earth, and we'll get to that later. So we have here Al-Mummum getting into the pyramid, and he ransacked it, found no maps, found no great wealth, and it took him many months, and he had a lot of workmen at this, and some of them become exhausted going down in that pit with torches, the fumes of it. They would pass out. I imagine some of them got emphysema or some other diseases we don't know. And it was hot down there because of the torches and things like that. And what Al-Mummum did, he scattered some gold around, gold coins and gold pieces of gold throughout the pyramid for them to find, because they were supposed to share in the booty. And this is the way he paid them for their work. As far as the maps were concerned, we're going to get into the maps of the pyramid. They're woven into the pyramid themselves. But because he couldn't find any great wealth in the pyramid became in disuse. It was just built for nothing, you know what I mean? And this was the 8th century A.D. So it became in disuse, and bats and snakes and other things, reptiles, varmint, crawled into the pyramid. Some made desks and things like this, and they had all kinds of droppings, and it became to stink. And the owls and the bats would fly out of the pyramid, and people took it as a bad omen, and they stayed away from the pyramid. Well, why did God allow all that to happen to the pyramid? Well, that was for the pyramid's protection. People stayed out of it. Man is the greatest destroyer in the world. Everything he gets his hand on, he destroys. Many species of animals have disappeared because of the destruction of man. He destroys the atmosphere. He destroys the water and the food chain. Everything he does, he's very destructive. And God didn't intend for this pyramid to be destroyed. Later on, the pyramid on the outside had a high coating of glistening, polished white granite. And it was, when the sun shone on it, due to the fact that it was concave, like this, concave, when the sun shone on it, it would reflect a beam of light way out into the desert. The word pyramid means light measure, or the Hebrew word for revelation measure. In other words, it was something to measure revelation, or God's plan. It was also a light measure because it reflected the light way out into the desert from the sun shined on it. And once a year, the sun was right over the pyramid, and all four sides could be shown, only once a year. So the pyramid was standing there, being a revelation measure and a light measure, but there was a great earthquake in Cairo, and the city was destroyed. So the people of Cairo went and took the casing stones off of the pyramid, these shiny rocks, to rebuild the city of Cairo, and most of the mosques and great buildings of Cairo are built from these casing stones of the pyramid. But it doesn't distort the message that it has, so it was all right that they probably used them for that. However, it would have been beautiful if they were on there yet today. So the pyramid remained in great disuse. Now we come to Sir Isaac Newton, one of our foremost scientists of a few centuries back. Sir Isaac Newton was working on a project, and one of his projects, he worked on many projects, but one of them was working on gravity. And in order to prove his theory, he had to know the diameter of the Earth. And the French hadn't come along with measuring the Earth and coming out with their metric system then, and if he had that, they would have been wrong anyhow. So he needed to find the diameter of the Earth in order to find the length of the sacred cubit. The common or vulgar unit, which was a cubit, was 18 inches long. But the sacred cubit was different, and this is what was the cubit in the beginning. It's called the sacred cubit. And if he knew the diameter of the Earth, he would be able to tell the length of the cubit. He needed to know the cubit in order to work out his theory. And as they didn't know the diameter of the Earth, he said that they asked him if there was any place where the sacred cubit was recorded. He says, yes, in the Ark of Noah. Noah built the Ark with the sacred cubit. And he said, we don't know where the Ark came to rest. They didn't know it was on, they knew the Bible said the Mount Ararat, but that we hadn't discovered it up there yet. And they said, well, where else? And he says, in the Great Pyramid of Giza. And this sent a stream of scientists to the pyramid to find this sacred cubit. But first they had to clean out all the manure out of the passageways, they had to air it out, and they had to renovate it, and they went to work to find the sacred cubit. And they found the sacred cubit by going up the pyramid. They came into this, as they enter into here, they found the granite leaf. And on it there's a little boss. And we want to turn over here to this blown up picture of this on the Great Pyramid. Take them down. This boss is 5 inches across and 5 inches tall, and which is the square root of 25. Also, that the center of this boss is 25 inches, pyramid inches, from the east wall. It doesn't connect to any other wall. That is, that this, looking at it from this way, is this way out from that wall, which gives the length of the sacred cubit of 25 inches. And also, they measured this boss, this thing that sticks out there a little bit on the Great Pyramid. And they found it to be, and they used jewelers' calipers to do this. And they found it to be 11 ten-thousandths bigger than the regular inch, British inch. So here we have the size of the pyramid inch and of the sacred cubit. And these are the two measurements that the coded message of everything that is in the pyramid is either by the sacred cubit or the pyramid inch. And these scientific things that we gave you, they use the pyramid inch for the measurement, as well as the sacred cubit. So there was a number of people that came and measured it, and they found these scientific things, and they kept popping up more and more and more, and they thought it was great. But then one of them says, well, why would a pyramid be made to give scientific evidence when we wouldn't be able to use these things until after we discover it? They wondered why this would happen. So some of them got the idea that these people not just were smart, but they were God smart. That is, that they had a manifestation of God that revealed these things to them. And therefore they said, well, there must be a greater message than just these scientific things. So somebody got the idea, one of these researchers, that the passageways in the pyramid were a chronological time scale, and each inch representing one solar year. So this was just an idea, and several people went down there and started looking it over, and looked at it, and they said, well, maybe so. Then they looked at this drawing of the inside of the pyramid, and of course it's all blown up on the chart here in order for you to be able to see it from a distance. This is way out of proportion, the inside of this thing. So if we look at the pyramid over here, we can see that it's more in proportion. See? And even that's blown up. So the thing is that the pyramid, they look at this here drawing, and in itself, it gives you a message. Why the passageways? Well, they got the idea this is the way to hell. Destruction. In the Bible, Jesus said that the pathway to hell was a broad way, and everybody finds this one real easy. They slide right down into it, you know. But the way to the spiritual into heaven is small and tortuous, you know. And it's an uphill battle. So they got the idea that man coming down here, all of a sudden they get to a point where it's possible to go upward again. And it keeps going up here, and then they see this grand gallery here. They don't know what that is, and it has some overlays in it, and they don't realize what the overlays stand for. So they come in here, and then they looked at this, and they says, aha, there are two rooms here. Okay. And they said, well, in the great temple of Moses, he first built a tabernacle, and he built a tent in the desert and divided it in two by a curtain. And then finally Solomon made it into a big stone building. And he put these rooms in there, and before it an altar for the slaying of animals. And they said, well, this is the module from what Moses made his replica of this. Now, how would Moses happen to do this? Well, Moses was raised as the Pharaoh's son, or the Pharaoh's daughter's son. And out of his back window, there was the Great Pyramid. And in the library was the drawings that we have here of the Great Pyramid. Of course, these drawings were finally destroyed by the wicked priests of Christendom. In the 3rd century, they went and they burned the library of the Cairo of Alexandria, in which these drawings were in. And they took Hypatia, the priestess, that was very scientific. And the priest, as he's driving down the street in her chariot, they pulled her off her chariot, stripped her clothes off of her, and they scraped her skin off with seashells. Because they looked at science as unclean. And they destroyed the drawings of this pyramid in so doing. So it had to be reproduced from people going in there and measuring this. And they make these drawings. But they take a look at it, and here it's coming to the kingdom. The end of the passageways come to the kingdom. And if we look down here, they have an extended line, and along with the outside of the pyramid extending down to here. And this represents going up towards the peak, which is the kingdom, and the capstone would be the kingdom. But at a certain time, man fell. And this is just at the time of the flood, and man starts going down to hell again. You know, and this is because the Adamics were going upward, but because they were in violation of Adam's laws and teachings, they were then going down to hell. And of course, he was going to destroy them all, but he had Noah. And we will get into the significance of this being Noah and so forth. But then we get here and we start going upward and upward and upward. And here begins our main story. The story that we have in the Great Pyramid. One of the great examiners of the pyramid was that of, we need to get this up here again, was Piazza Smith. He was the Astronomer Royal of Scotland. And he became imbued, he was a very religious man. He became imbued with the idea that was being circulated that there was a spiritual message in the pyramid enshrined in the passageways and chambers of the Great Pyramid. And being a very scientific person, in order to be the Astronomer Royal, he had to have a high education in order for the government of Scotland to appoint him as the Astronomer Royal. So he was a scientific man as well as religious. And he made some rods. He cut them at 68 degrees Fahrenheit, the same temperature on the inside of the pyramid. And the reason of cutting them at that length is that iron expands in heat and contracts in cold. In order for them to be the exact measurements of measuring this pyramid, he had to have them perfect. And he was able to do this. And he went over and he measured the various passageways and so forth, and he spent quite a bit of time. Later on, other people have measured them, and David Davidson spent 20 years in the pyramid going over all the other measurements that the other ones had made and come up with the pyramid in its divine measure and its divine message. So one of the things that he discovered is that the distance from here to here was 1,455.778 pyramid inches, which gave him the 0 point. That is, from here to here was that length. So this is the birth of Jesus. And the reason that they had to establish the birthday of Jesus is that the Christians are peculiar. They think in AD and BC. They don't start at the beginning of Adam in the calendar, but they start with the birth of Jesus. So everything before Jesus was BC, and they go backward. So this establishes the date of the Exodus of Moses, which was 1456 BC, because that comes out of 1456 BC, in March 21st. It was the Exodus of Moses. And then we go beyond that, and from the Exodus of Moses, we come up to a scored line here, and this is and from the Exodus of Moses to the scored line is 687.775 pyramid inches. Giving us the date, it was adding it to the 1455.778. We have 2,143.553 pyramid inches from the 0 point, or June the 21st, 2144 BC. And this is the date for Abraham. And then we go from the date of Abraham, and we get to the start of this stone here, which is the the stone of Noah, is called the Purple Arch. And it was 356 pyramid inches from Abraham, giving us altogether from the 0 point 2,499.553 pyramid inches from the 0 point, or June the 21st, 2500 BC. And this is the date of Noah. So here we have Noah. Now this is resting, we don't show it here, is resting on the 15th layer of masonry. And if we say that each layer of masonry is 100 years, we add this 1500 to 2500 and we get the year 4000 that the dated Bible gives us at the date of Adam, of 4000 BC. So we have this as 4000 BC. Coming up 15 layers, we get to the Purple Arch. It rests on this. The Purple Arch represents the rainbow in the sky that is recorded in the 9th chapter of the book of Genesis. And he said God put the rainbow in the sky, telling us that he would never destroy the world with a flood again. Therefore, this is the sign of the covenant, and it also is the sign for Moses and the rainbow. So we get to the rainbow at 2500 BC.
Noah?
Yeah. Noah. 2500 BC is Noah at the time of the rainbow. So then, from Noah, we come down to Moses, and then we come up to the 0 point. But we have something here that is quite threatening to us. We have some red granite blocks. If we focus over here, you got 1, 2, and 3. Moses starts this shaft upwards. The first manifestation of God was Adam, and the next one is Moses. Adam starts this passageway upward, but man fell at the time of Noah, and he kept going downward until we get to Moses. And this is the covenant of Moses. It's in 3 parts. The first part of the covenant of Moses, and this is found in the 28th chapter of Deuteronomy, it states in the first 15 verses that if you will obey all the laws and all the teachings and the things that I give you, including the covenant, he says, you people, Israel, talking to Israel, he says, you'll become the greatest people in the world. You'll be the best people, the most spiritual people, the richest people. He says, you will be the head and the other people of the world the tail. You'll be blessed when you go in and blessed when you come out. He says, if your enemies come at you one way, they'll flee before you 7 ways. He says, everything you take your hand to do will be blessed. He says, and you'll become abundant. The abundance of your crops and of your animals and of your also of your own genealogies, all of this will prosper. This, after Moses, and 400 years after Moses, at the time of Solomon, this promise was fulfilled. That is, at the time of Moses, the people came out of Egypt. They were worshiping animals, and Moses had them take their animals and burn them on the altar before the temple. And the purpose of burning these animals on the altar is to show man that animals aren't gods. In Egypt, they were taught that animals were gods. And Moses had to destroy this concept so they would again worship the one true God of Adam, the one true invisible God. And in the Bible it says nobody's seen God. But God appears to Moses in the burning bush, but he doesn't see God face to face. But God tells him to go down to Egypt and to get the people and to bring them out. Then again he went up on the mountain after he brought the people out, and he was given the 10 Commandments by God. So here we have what we call a manifestation. A manifestation of God is just like any one of us, plus he has the Holy Spirit. Now we are like other animals, plus we have the intellect. The animals are like the plants, except that they have they have the five senses. Plants are made of minerals, but plus they have growth and reproduction. But the manifestation of God has a soul like we do, and the intellect. They have the physical five senses. They grow and reproduce as the vegetable, and they're composed out of minerals. But they have the Holy Spirit. And what we get of the Holy Spirit all comes from the ones that possess it, the manifestations. That is, they receive the thought of God, and they give it in a word or a revelation, the logos. So here we have Moses that has given the law to these people and telling them that they'll become the greatest people in the world. At the time of Solomon, they were the richest people in the world. There was as much silver in Jerusalem as there is stones in Missoula. So rich were these people. Solomon had 1,000 charioteer cities and chariots and horsemen. And these were given by the different nations of the world to Solomon. All the nations of the world paid tribute to Solomon. And even the greatest gift that they could give a king, a great king, was that the king would send his daughter to the great king to be his wife. And thus Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines. Well, what was wrong with this? Well, God never limited the number of wives that an Israeli might have, but he did say, do not take yourself foreign wives. Well, why not take a foreign wife? Well, outside of Israel, that Moses was established, were the pagans that were believing in this triune God baloney, you know. And it was the baloney that Semiramis put upon them, the paganism. In other words, also the paganism before the flood of sun, moon, and stars was brought back by Nimrod, and his wife brought the triune God. And the world was all corrupted with this corruption of Satan, the devil, Nimrod, and his wife Semiramis. So Moses wanted to keep these people separate from these people. And he says, if you take a foreign wife, they will beguile you. They will get you to worship their gods. And what happened to Solomon? Solomon builds the temple. His father David bought the top of Mount Moriah, the base in which this temple was built. And Solomon builds this temple, and God was real happy with Solomon. He says, Solomon, you are a great king. And he loved Solomon because he built a temple to him. But then Solomon did something else. He built 4 other temples, 5 altogether. And they were to the gods, Esdras and to Malcolm and so forth. And these were the gods of the pagans, all referring to Semiramis and to Nimrod and to the son Horus. And he built these temples for this because he had these 700 wives that was given to him by the pagan kings that paid him tribute. And they said, we don't believe in your one true invisible God, and we're away from our homeland. We want our temple to pray, and we want our gods to worship. So Solomon obliged. And there's some indication that Solomon did this because he's going to try to make Jerusalem an international city to govern over the whole world. And therefore he wanted to bring these people to Jerusalem. So not to insult them, he was building temples to their God. But it was more in the demand of his wives that did this. And of course, one of the great commandments of God is that you should not make yourself engraven images. You must not bow down to them. He says, I am your Lord God that brought you out of the land of Egypt. You'll have no other God before you. See? Just the one true invisible God of Adam. But what happened? One of his wives, and she must have been a very pretty little thing, and he must have wanted her real bad. She beguiled Solomon, and he went into her temple and bowed down before Esdras, which is Semiramis, the creator of the triune baloney. See? And God became angry at Solomon. He says, Solomon, you broke the covenant. And he says, now, the curse. And the curse that Moses had given starts in the 28th chapter at the 16th verse. And it goes on page after page after page of all the things that are going to happen. I want you people to get the Bible out and start the 28th chapter of, not now, home, when you get home, 28th chapter of Deuteronomy, and read the first 15 verse, which is a blessing, and then the curse. And then we go on to the 30th chapter of Deuteronomy, and we find the third stone, which is the blessing. He says, after you've had the, and one of the things that is going to happen is that they would go back into captivity. This is part of the curse. In a nation that your fathers didn't know, that you wouldn't go back into Egypt in captivity. Well, right after Solomon, God split Israel. He took 10 of the tribes away from Solomon's son, Rehoboam, and he gave it to a fellow by the name of Jeroboam, that pulled away completely from the temple worship, and they became pagan. They went back to paganism. Elijah, the prophet Elijah, had gone to the Israel and tried to get these people to return to the true worship of God that Moses had given them. In fact, he took 700 pagan priests up on Mount Carmel and slew them. And the king was Ahab, and his wife was Jezebel, and she was a pagan witch that was really teaching paganism to the Israelites. And of course, they went on for a while, and in 721 BC, they were conquered. The 10 tribes was conquered by Salmanaser V, king of Assyria, and was brought into Assyria and into its province Media, which is the northern part of Iran today, around the place where Baha'u'llah is from, Tehran. And the two southern tribes later on, well, right after the split between the northern and the southern tribes, Judah and Benjamin became united. And 6 years after the split, the king of Egypt come down and conquers Jerusalem. And from that time on, they were always under the tutorship or the suzerain of some monarch. And in 660 BC, Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon conquers Jerusalem and the Jews. And he takes a contingent of them into captivity. And then later, in 586 BC, he comes in and destroys the city. He destroys the temple and takes the rest of the people into Babylon into captivity, thus fulfilling Moses' covenant to the people that if they don't obey, that they would go back into captivity. And then it says another place in the chapters that they would be scattered all over the world. After that, they would come back from captivity and then be scattered all over the world. Well, part of the Jews came back from captivity 70 years after they went in it. In 538, they were conquered by Cyrus, and Cyrus allowed them in 536 to go back and rebuild the temple. And then and from this descendancy Jesus Christ come. But the major part of the Jews remained in Babylon. Only part of them went back to rebuild the temple and the city. Baha'u'llah's ancestry remained in Babylon, which is now Iran. And that is because the throne was there. Nebuchadnezzar, when he conquered Babylon, he put the king Jehoiakim in prison and then later took him out of prison. And then he set him on a throne above the other thrones, or the thrones of the other countries. And this was because of the greatness of Daniel. And that throne continued to exist down to the present time, preserving the descendancy of King David. Down, and Baha'u'llah's father sat on the throne of Zandrin, which is that throne. And Baha'u'llah was the eldest son to mount that throne, meaning he became the second Messiah, that descendancy of David. Where Jesus descended from Nathan in the 3rd chapter of Luke, it describes this, which was not the line of kings. But Baha'u'llah was through the line of kings down to the present time, and therefore he's the King of Kings. And Jesus said his kingdom was not of this world. Although Jesus had a kingdom, he said it was not of this world, and he placed his covenant in the temple in heaven, where Baha'u'llah's covenant is here on this earth for the kingdom of God on this earth. And this is the start of the passageways message, is the 3 parts of Moses' covenant to his people. And that the 3rd part is after you've had the blessing and the curse, that is, you've been scattered. The Israelites became lost. The 10 tribes of Israel became lost in identity. They remained in Iran, where part of the Jews had come back and rebuilt Jerusalem. But the Israelites, the 10 tribes, became lost in identity. They were converted into Zoroastrianism and then into Islam. But Baha'u'llah, when he left Tehran and for Baghdad, many of these people come with him, and then when he left Baghdad for Israel, many of these people, the 12 tribes, came with Baha'u'llah, a remnant of these 12 tribes. And thus Baha'u'llah brought the 12 tribes of Israel back into Israel from captivity. And then it says that they would be, after they had had the blessing and the curse, then he would regather them from all over the world. Well, the Jews were scattered all over the world by Titus at the time of when they had Jesus crucified. That Titus, at the head of the Roman legions in 70 AD, marched into Jerusalem, destroyed the city a 2nd time, destroyed the temple a 2nd time. He left the Holy of Holies intact, and it's under the rubble of where the temple was, and the Mosque of Omar is built over it today. And the Jews were forbidden to go back into Jerusalem until the coming of Baha'u'llah and the Bab. They were kept out of this area. They were scattered. But that was only a contingent of the Jews. The other Jews that remained in Iran, of which Baha'u'llah's family, had not been scattered yet. And when Baha'u'llah brought them to Israel, they still had to be scattered. Baha'u'llah, when he brought the 12 tribes, he being the king, the Baha'is, are Israel under its new name, Baha'i, and they're the 12 tribes of Israel. Where the Jews in Israel, the state of Israel, are still apostate. They're still under the curse. And that is, why are they under the curse? They don't have their temple. They don't have their Holy of Holies. It's underneath the mosque. They don't have the Ark of the Covenant. Nebuchadnezzar destroyed it. Their high priesthood came to an end in the 2nd or 3rd century AD when they started intermarrying. So they asked Moses Dayan, they says, what are you going to do about this? He says, they've shown him that mosque. He says, that's where the temple should be. And he said, well, we'll rebuild it again. He says, how will you do that? Do you go down and destroy the mosque? He said, that wouldn't be wise today. It would bring on a great holy war. And the whole world would be against him destroying that mosque. So they said, what are you going to do about it? And he said, well, maybe an earthquake might destroy it. Then he said, then what would you do? Well, he says, it took Solomon 40 years to build it in the first time. He said, we rebuilt it in 40 days. Okay? And I don't think he was bragging, because the Jews have a lot of technology. They do it in a big hurry. They said, well, they asked Moses Dayan, they said, well, if you rebuild it, you don't have the Ark of the Covenant to put into the Holy of Holies. He said, that's right. And he said, nobody knows where it's at. And Moses Dayan agreed that if it was found, it would be deteriorated. It wouldn't be able to, be put in there. And he said, well, if you did find it, who have you got to put it in? Because only a high priest can go into the Holy of Holies. And as you no longer have any high priest, you have nobody to put it in. He said, well, we're going to have God's intervention. Maybe the Messiah will come, and he will solve the problem for us. But they are baffled. They're under the curse, because Moses gave them, these are the things they must do. They must worship in the temple, and they must, have certain things to do. And because of right after Solomon started worshiping Estrith, the Babylonian whore, all of Israel started doing the same thing. And that's why they went into captivity, and that's why the punishment, and that's why the curse. Because they were going after the Babylonian pagan gods, and Christianity has done the same damnable thing. The same damnable thing. They go after the pagan triune God. I don't know why they want to worship a pagan triune God when there's only one God. So anyhow, they still have to be scattered all over the world. Well, Baha'u'llah, when he wrote his covenant, our sins are forgiven if we accept this covenant. And thus we are grafted into the 12 tribes of Israel. The Baha'is are the 12 tribes of Israel. First he brought the remnant back from captivity, the 12 tribes. But then he makes his covenant, and as the Baha'i faith spread throughout all the world, every country, every island, every province, every Indian tribe, all the different tribes of India, all throughout the world, even in the furthest corners of Africa and all the parts of the world, the Baha'i faith has come. When my wife and I brought the Baha'i faith to a little island in the Indian Ocean called Reunion, a population of about 250,000 people, it was the first time they ever heard the name Baha'i. And we left them there with an administration and establishing the Baha'i faith. We went over to Mauritius, and we brought in several hundred people into the Baha'i faith and left them with centers all over the island with many assemblies. But and we brought it to the last places, the reaches of the world. That Mauritius and Reunion are far away from Missoula, Montana, on the other side of the globe, as far away from here as you can go without coming back. It's just, if you want to know where Mauritius Reunion, find Missoula and just put your finger on the opposite side, and there you are where we went. We brought it to the farthest reaches to the world. And now the message of the Baha'i faith has been spread to all of the people. It's been translated in about 800 different languages and dialects. And the Baha'i faith has come from 2 7-year plans of Shoghi Effendi. He was following Abdu'l Baha's divine plan, and then a 10-year world crusade that my wife and I participated in establishing this kingdom. And then Shoghi Effendi knighted my wife and I for the valiant services we rendered the cause of God, along with about 150 other people. But all the rest of the knights were expelled from the Baha'i faith by the Guardian for covenant breaking, and they're either have died or been expelled by the Guardian. So we're the only 2 knights left in the world today. And that is because we've been firm in the covenant and we've remained loyal to the covenant. But in the time of Moses, or in the time of Solomon, they broke the covenant. You saw what happened to them. See? Now we're talking about that the Israel is supposed to, according to the curse, is to be scattered all over the world, as the Jews were all scattered all over the world. When they broke this covenant, when these Baha'is broke the covenant of Baha'u'llah, by not continuing in the descendancy of David, in the guardians of the Baha'i faith, trying to do away with the guardians. The reason that the descendancy of David was named guardians by Abdu'l Baha, they were to guard the faith. So they said, well, we have to get rid of God's Davidic kingship that he's taken all these thousands of years to preserve and to come into being, to guard the faith. They said, well, if we get rid of the guards, we can take over, in which they did. And the people went along with them. The people loved to have it so, and thus we're going to do in the end thereof. It says this in the Bible. And the people loved to have the pagan gods, and what are you going to do about it? They're going to go after pagan gods too. So the people are wayward people. But there's a day of judgment. All the worlds are now entering into the final judgment. They're all being assembled, and they're being brought down, according to Joel, to the valley of Jehoshaphat, which is the valley of Kidron today. It's the place of demarcation between Jordan and Israel. And all the peoples are going to come into a conflagration at the Valley of Jehoshaphat, and he's going to deal judgment upon the people. And this is happening very rapidly now, starting in the Straits of Hormuz in the Persian Gulf, and I think in a day or two we'll be reflagging a Kuwaiti ship and escorting it in through the Persian Gulf. And the fireworks are about ready to happen. We have a degraded president participating in the greatest debacle that the United States has ever had, telling the people not to sell arms to terrorists, and then behind the people's back of this country, he was busy at the time. He was telling the nations, he's telling the European nations not to do this. It was a dirty thing to do, and he was doing that when he's telling them not to do this. And then he lies about the whole thing, you know. And then they have this thing going on in television, and a bunch of more lies come up. So it is right at a time when our president has done the worst thing that a president could do. We are now coming down to the battle of Armageddon, in which they're going to enter into judgment with the peoples of the world. And this is why this message that we have here today is of the utmost importance. And what will happen is that when they broke this covenant, when the Baha'is broke the covenant, they were all over the world in all these different cities. And all of them were expelled from the Baha'i faith. All of them were expelled from the Baha'i faith. With the passing of Mason Remy, the son of Abdul Baha, there was only 2 Baha'is left in the world, and that was my wife and I. Even the Guardian wasn't claiming his station. And the Baha'i faith, if it wasn't for this night on the white horse, or the return of Jesus, the return of the Lamb, the coming of the 7th angel, the establisher, the world and the coming catastrophe would be utterly destroyed. There'd be nobody left. And it says if those days aren't shortened, there would be nobody left. And when we attacked the covenant breakers in Rizwan, that is on the 29th day of April of this year at Wilmette, the man on the white horse has now gone into battle against the red horse, the black horse, and the pale horse. And the whole world is going to be in this conflagration. And of course the man on the white horse is going to win. That's why it's called a white horse. You know, he's the good guy. The other ones are going to lose. Because this man on the white horse is going to have a sword that they can't put down, and that's the tongue. The tongue of truth. And when the catastrophe starts falling upon the people, they will realize that they have strayed so far from God and what God has intended for them, that they realize that they are lost souls. They will realize why they're into this thing. So we have here, at the very beginning of the passageway, the third part there is that they would be regathered again, from all over the world. And this knight on the white horse, by attacking the covenant breakers and attacking the people that follow the devil, Satan, Nimrod, and the one that sits upon the throne of Satan, that wears the fish hat and that has the crosshair of Nimrod. He has the keys of Janus and Sybil, Janus being Nimrod and Sybil Semiramis. He has the red robe, which makes him the red devil. So we have here a battle going on, and there's going to be a great judgment. And the message in the pyramid is of the utmost importance. The regathering of Israel. There will be 144,000. And it says, when we get in the book of Revelation, it says that the 4 winds of destruction, there's going to be 4 winds. It's going to become in like great waves, one following the other. Okay? And these 4 winds of destruction are going to come and destroy the ungodly people. But these 4 winds are held back until this person this man on the white horse, this seventh angel, the return of Jesus, gathers the 144,000. In August, the 17th will be the harmonic convergence. From Hosea Arguelles, he states that there are thousands of centers throughout the world that are observing the harmonic convergence. And I want to read some that he has written here. He says, join the millions of humans in this turning point event to rejoin the earth. According to ancient prophecy, August the 16th marks the end of a cycle known as the fifth sun. August the 17th is the beginning of a new cycle. With a mind full of peace, go to your favorite place with those you love at dawn on August the 16th. Know that at countless sites around the planet, a common event is occurring. Through the day, share and celebrate in the splendor of nature. At the dawn of August the 17th, a new fire, and celebrate the beginning of a new cycle of life for the planet. They call this the harmonic convergence, and it comes from the discovering the Mayan calendar, which is not a calendar as we have it per se, but Hosea Arguelles states in his book how this pertains to a spiritual calendar of spiritual events. And it was very scientific. In fact, he claims that the Mayans were much more scientific than we are with our science and metals and machines and guns and things of this nature. That theirs was a more perfect type of science. And they find that this cycle comes to an end. He says the harmonic convergence, the prophecies of Karen Koss. The time of harmonic convergence on August the 16th and 17th of this year, when the Earth's old military-industrial age will give way to a new spiritually enlightened one, has long been foretold in the ancient traditions from the Aztec and Mayans, the Hopi, Lakota, Sioux, and other Native American tribes, to the ancient Egyptians and the Christians, Buddhists, and Hindu religions. According to the ancient wisdom contained in myth, prophecy, legend, and other lore, this year will see the return of the archetypical divine energy, a being called Quetzalcoatl by the Aztec and the Toltecs, Kukulkan and Cucamatz by the Mayas, Pohana by the Hopis, and Jesus Christ by the Christians, that will propel the earth into a new cycle of healing, rebuilding, cooperation, and refocusing. What he's saying here, that all the peoples, whether they're Hindus or Buddhists, Christians, or American Indians, are all looking for one to occur or to appeal or unmask himself at that particular time, so that the peoples of the world will know him, and this will bring about a whole new cycle of things. He says, according to Dr. Joseph Jacobins, author of The Rolling Thunder, The Coming Earth Changes, Mesoamerica prophecy speaks of, and the Aztec and Mayan calendars chart, a long period of time beginning in 843 AD and ending this year, which was divided up into 13 heavens and 9 hells, each lasting 52 years. The last of the 13 heavens, according to the calendar, ended in 1519, the year Cortez and his conquistadores landed in Mexico. At the end of the 9th and last hell, which corresponds to August the 15th, 1987, of the Gregorian calendar, Texacatlipoca, the god of death and destruction, will remove his jade mask to reveal his true nature beneath. Quetzalcoatl, the god of peace, Zapotec Indian prophecies foretell that on the morning of August 16th, the giant El Truo tree near Oaxaca, Mexico, is a cousin to the sequoia, and one of the oldest living things on the planet, will be infused with the myriad rays of energy from Quetzalcoatl. Legend has it that one of the feathered serpent's incarnations is buried beneath the tree. This energy, in the form of billions of tiny spirit light, will then emanate from the tree's roots, trunks, limbs, to enter every living being as a crystalline seed of peace and love, according to the prophecy. A common idea in many traditions, mythologies, is that of the 144,000 enlightened persons who will help usher in the awakening for all others on the planet. These people will gather at numerous ancient sites around the globe, such as the Great Pyramid of Egypt, the Stonehenge in England, the Machu Picchu in Peru, the Grand Canyon in Arizona, and the Black Hills in South Dakota, to pray, meditate, and focus on healing energies. The number 144, which corresponds to the harmonic of light, is itself a powerful expression of the divine. The complex counters of the Aztecs Mayans were very precise, crafted through numerical extrapolations of the number of Quetzalcoatl multiplied by 16. The 4 seasons times the 4 directions equal 144. This is very, very important. We are in the year 144 of the Baha'i era, according to the Baha'i calendar. It corresponds with what they're saying here. The key of the Mesoamerican, North American prophecy is that the return of Quetzalcoatl. Through 144,000 rainbow warriors or dancers who will gather for ritual ceremony, invocations, and celebration to dance the dream awake, the dream of a new and better world. Christian theology speaks of the second coming of Jesus Christ, and the Bible mentions 144,000 servants of God who will have his name written on their forehead and will sing a new song before the throne. And this is what we've been teaching when we went through the book of Revelation. Here he talks about the 144,000 being these that are going to be at these celebrations around the world. And he's not the only one. Many of the religions claim to be the 144,000. For instance, the Jehovah's Witnesses say that they have the 144,000, that they are the only ones up in heaven with Jesus helping them to rule at the present time, that they've already been taken up into the sky with Jesus. And the rest of the people won't resurrect out of their graves until Jesus returns with these 144,000. There's a lot of people that quote this, but the Bible, as we've gone through it in the book of Revelation, said that these are from the 12 tribes of Israel. And he would have this Quetzalcoatl's name, or the name of Jesus on his return, as well as Baha'u'llah's name, his father's name, on their foreheads, meaning that they will recognize the promised one for today. As they have said here, the return of Jesus is Quetzalcoatl. He is Kulkan. He is all of these persons. He's just called by different names, by different revelations. And with the coming of this date is so important because this person then will appear. As I've already explained, is that I made an assault upon the covenant breakers in Wilmette on April the 29th. And I blew the trumpet, which is the trumpet of the seventh angel. This has been picked up by a major newspaper in America, and they're writing a full-page release or story on this, which is based around the release that we gave them, which is the trumpet blast or trumpet sound. And this will so come about that at this date, this person will be known in the world by the communication media. Now, whether these people that are going to they're going to be at these different sites are going to recognize the promised one that they're waiting for, because there's a lot of shasham and medicine men and other people at the heads of the different tribes and the heads of the different religions, the same as in the Christian faith. We have people that are at the head of the Methodist and the Baptist, the Catholic, and so forth. And each time that a promised one comes, these are the people that are so direly waiting for his coming are the first to reject him. Because he doesn't come the way that they have interpreted their scriptures or their prophecies. And they're the first ones to nail him on a cross like the Jews did Jesus. They're the ones to come against him. I have a book here pertaining to this particular time that Abdu'l-Baha wrote concerning this one that is to come. And he is supposed to be he's in the 6th and the 19th chapter of the book of Revelation. He's the man in the white horse. He is the knight on the white horse that comes, the prophesied in the Bible. And Abdu'l-Baha talks about this knight on the white horse. Shoghi Effendi knighted 150 knights, and these are he called them the Knights of Baha'u'llah. And he said that these will establish the kingdom. Abdu'l-Baha had already said that the knights would establish the kingdom. And as I explained to you, that when the covenant breaking took place, that all of the rest of these knights had died off, or they had been expelled from the faith by the guardian for covenant breaking, with only my wife and I remaining as Knights of Baha'u'llah. We were knighted as Knights of Baha'u'llah in 1954 by Shoghi Effendi. And we have, and here Abdu'l-Baha says, here's what Shoghi Effendi said: we only have to refer to the warnings uttered by Abdu'l-Baha. How great, how very great is the cause. How very fierce the onslaught of all the peoples and kindreds of the earth. Ere long shall the clamor of the multitude throughout Africa, throughout America, the cry of the European and the Turk, the groaning of India and China be heard from far and near. One and all, they shall arise with all of their power to resist his cause. Then shall the knights of the Lord, assisted by grace from on high, strengthened by faith, aided by the power of understanding, and reinforced by the legions of the covenant, arise and make manifest the truth of the verse. Behold, the confusion that has befallen the tribes of the defeated. At this time, when they arise, I'll have 144,000. And all the people of the world will be against me. This is the judgment. In the scriptures, we have in the 7 of Revelation and 14 of Revelation concerning this 144,000. And as they are looking for the 144,000, we have to know what the scripture says about it. And he says here, after this I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding back the 4 winds of the earth, that no wind might blow on the earth, sea, or any tree. And these are identified as the 4 winds of destruction. They will come in 4 great ways, one following the other. But they're going to be held back. Then I saw another angel ascend from the rising sun, and the seal of the living God.
And he called with a loud voice to the four angels who had given the power to harm the earth and the sea, saying, "Do not harm the earth or the sea or the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God upon their forehead." And I heard the number to be sealed, 144,000 sealed out of every tribe of the sons of Israel. And these 144,000 are going to come out of the tribes of Israel. The Baha'i faith is Israel under its new name. The state of Israel is apostate Israel. They don't have their temple, they don't have their Ark of their Covenant, they don't have their Holy of Holies, and they don't have a high priest. They're apostate. Moses gave them this, and this was the connection between them and God. The Holy of Holies in their temple was the presence of God. And the only one that could enter this temple was the high priest. And he did it before the Ark of the Covenant. When they went into captivity, Nebuchadnezzar took this Ark of the Covenant and put it in Babylon, and it was lost ever since. When they rebuilt the temple, there was no Ark of the Covenant. And in the 3rd century AD, the high priesthood came to an end. They don't have their temple. The Mosque of Omar is built over the site. However, the Holy of Holies is underneath the rubble where the Mosque of the Omar temple is at. So we've already gone through this when we went through the proofs, that this new temple is the revelation of the Bab and Baha'u'llah, which we will see when we get into the pyramid. And he says that they will be sealed upon their forehead. But after this, now before the catastrophe, there's only going to be 144,000 that are going to recognize this. But after this, I looked and behold a great multitude which no man could number, from every nation, from all tribes and peoples, tongues, standing before the throne. This is the Davidic throne. And before the Lamb, clothed in white robes, with palm branches in their hand. The palm branches mean surrender. And crying with a loud voice, "Salvation belongs to our God who sits upon the throne and the Lamb." And it says in the 9th chapter of Isaiah that God will rule the world through the throne of David, a descendant of David, seated on the throne. And all the angels stood around the throne and round the elders and the 4 living creatures, and they fell on their faces before the throne and worshiped God, saying, saying amen, blessing and glory and wisdom and thanksgiving and honor and power and might be unto our God forever and ever. Wherever you see it, then amen, it means it is now finished. It's a sign that that thing will be the finish. And then we have in the 14th chapter something very similar. Then I looked, and lo, on Mount Zion stood the Lamb, and with him 144,000 who had his name. And as I fulfill the prophecy, the Lamb, they will have my name and his Father's name. The word Baha'u'llah means glory of the Father. Name written on their foreheads. It means that they will arrive at it through the intellect. Not through some sort of dance or ceremony or something else of this nature. They arrive at it through the intellect. Just like we arrive at 2 and 2 is 4 through the intellect, not through the heart. That's the only way we can tell whether something is true or not. And I heard voices from the heavens like a sound of many waters, and like the sound of thunder peal, and I heard was like the sound of harpers playing on their harps. And they sing a new song. Now he mentions here that they sing a new song. Then who is this going to be? This 144,000 is going to come out of the covenant-breaking Baha'is. There'll be out of the 12 million Baha'is, 144,000 who are in there that shouldn't be there. You know what I mean? They're pure souls. They don't know any better. You know what I mean? And when this comes out in the newspaper and things like that, and they already are well grounded in the Baha'i faith. But what do they learn? There's a new song. That is my explanations and commentaries. What I'm teaching on these tapes, which is the new song. And when these 144,000 have been identified, then the 4 winds of destruction will be let loose, one following another. And after these 4 winds of destruction, there will be so many people that you can't count. Of course, 2/3 will be dead of the people. 1/3 will be left. And they will become Baha'is. They will turn to the Prince of Peace. They'll bow down before the throne, the Davidic throne. And the Quetzalcoatl, the Jesus, the Kalkan, he's got many names, many titles. And we read this here prophecy in the book of Revelation. It says that he has many titles, that many names, that they will recognize him. So I wanted to bring this out, but the date that they have gotten is accurate. They got it from a calendar that is actual, factual figuring. We've been looking for this trumpet sound to come out in the paper. It will come out at the precise time that this person will be known at that time. But because of the people's profusion of disinformation that they've been brought up with, just like the Jewish people were looking for a Messiah and were crying in their prayers, "Send us our Savior." The whole Jewish people were waiting for him. And when he come, they got a hammer and a nail and nailed him to the cross. They says, "Give us Barabbas, the murderer, and crucify Jesus." This is the heart of the people, and this is why the great catastrophe takes place. God always judges his people. Each time a manifestation of God comes at the day of judgment for a people. Like when Moses came, the judgment was the Pharaoh and his army didn't accept it, and they went down in the Red Sea. The judgment in the time of Noah, they didn't accept, and they were drowned in the flood. In the time of Jesus, the Jews didn't accept, and Titus in 70 AD marched into Jerusalem, destroyed the city, destroyed the temple, and cut the Jews up in little pieces. In the time of Krishna, it was one of the most successful wars of all time, the Mahabharata War. Everybody was killed except Krishna and Arjuna. Okay? So this comes upon the deniers, those that have got to concoct their own religion. Okay? Rather than the religion that comes down to us from the one invisible God through the thought of God that descends upon the manifestation that's expressed in the Word. And without these revelations, the people would be guideless. Without these revelations from God, everybody would have their own religion. And if we have 5 billion people in the world, we'd have 5 billion different religions. And as God sends one person with the information, he becomes a focal point for a whole new unity. In this day, we're having a grand slam type of a judgment, where all the people of the world have been promised one that is supposed to appear, on August the 15th and make himself known. At this time, he will only start to bring up the 144,000. Jesus said in the 24th chapter of Matthew, he says, after the oppression of that day, then he will send out his angels and gather the elect, which is the 144,000, from the four corners of the earth. The oppression is the oppression of the peoples of the world, but especially the Baha'i faith, in which we went and we made a crack in this wall of oppression. And this is by making this crack, all the information now will come pouring through to these covenant breakers. But among the 12 million covenant breakers, there's only 144,000 that are pure of heart. And it says in here that about these 144,000 is that they have not been corrupted. They are virgins. meaning that they had not been corrupted by the religions. No one could learn that new song except the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth. It is these who have not defiled themselves with women, for they are chaste. And here women pertains to religion. Every religion is female. And like the revelation of Jesus Christ was a beautiful religion, like a bride adorned for her husband. But by the time the clergy got through it, she was a whore, a prostitute, used for collecting of money and making people rich. They perverted the words and perverted the meanings. They said, but these people have not become corrupted by this. They're chaste. It is these who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. And they're referring that they will have completely understood my mission and my authority, and they will follow me wherever they go. And wherever he goes, these have been redeemed from mankind as the first fruits for God and the Lamb. And in their mouth no lie was found, for they are spotless. That is, they learn this new song. And when they give this song, it's not a lie. Where in comparison with the churches and with the religions and the sham men, the medicine men, and all these, they have so perverted what has been sent down previously that these people, although they know, are looking for a promised one, they'll do the same as the Jews did to Jesus. And many times you hear the saying that says Jesus should happen to come, they would nail him to a cross again. This is said over and over and over. And this is the people of the world that are been led into a lot of disinformation and a lot of theologies that aren't true at all. They're lies. So why are we going through this pyramid here? We're going through the pyramid, we're showing you the pathway of God that was recorded 5,500 years ago by Quetzalcoatl, the same maker of the pyramid in Egypt that built the pyramid for the Mayas. They're exactly the same. And in this pyramid, he has the prophecies of the coming of the kingdom. Can you zoom in on this picture over here? A little more. There we are. Let's focus it in. There, that's fine. All right, now here is the one in the Great Pyramid that we're going to show you in a little while. This is the one of the Mayans in Mexico. See? And you have the same structure here. You have the 4 chambers above the king's chamber. Here's the king's chamber, and then these 4 chambers above here. See? It's the same type of structure in Central America as we have in the Pyramid of Giza. And this is the coming of the kingdom, and this is the end of the chronological time scale. Also, the temple of the Mayas show that there is a 9-step. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, over on this side here you have the 9. It shows you the 9 here, see? And then we have this kingdom, see? And it says that these are the lords of the ages. It says here, in the terms of number of the kin or days passed since the initiation of the great cycle, the date 6.10.00 and so forth, like the keys of the Mayan dates, the key factor in the number 936, harmonic 936, is 9. The number symbolizing the periodicity, completeness. 9 is also the number of the mythic lords of time. And these are the 9 manifestations of God. Adam being the first, Moses the second, Krishna the third, Zoroaster the fourth, Buddha the fifth, Jesus the sixth, Muhammad the 7th, and the Bab the 8th, and Baha'u'llah the 9th. These are the lords of the ages, both in the Mayan temple and also in the temple at Giza. And it says here, there is a significant galactic phase according to the Mayan harmonic. It would occur in the year 52 year calendar, round period between 631 and 683, or between harmonic 1316 and 560. Indeed, these are the precise dates of the Avaric incarnation, known as Paskavotal Palak. His tomb, the only one like it in all of Middle America or Mesoamerica, and the only one comparable to the tomb of the Great Pyramid, is dated in 683. It lies within the 9-story temple. The inscription Palanku, in the chamber in which is the tomb, found the sepulchral representations of the 9 lords of time. And these 9 lords of time is the 9 manifestations that come to this earth with the thought of God expressed in the Word. And this is the Logos. The only thing we will ever know of God is the thought of God expressed in the Word. And they came in 9 manifestations, recorded in the pyramid in Giza, reported in the temple of the Mayas. They both have the same message. The builder of the pyramid in Giza was Quetzalcoatl, which gets his name from Enoch, the feathered serpent, that came to America to get the chocolate-colored granite for the coffer or the Ark of the Covenant in the Holy of Holies, and also for the topstone. And along the Mississippi, he had a lot of little pyramids, and they were called Indian mounds, as they come to get the stone. He gave the Indian people these prophecies, and these were spread all over the world. These 9 lords of the ages have now been complete with the coming of Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah being the descendant of David, fulfilling the prophecies for the second Christ to establish the kingdom of God on earth. But everybody wants something else besides what God has given. And this is why we're going to have the great destruction. They will not turn to the Prince of Peace. Baha'u'llah had a complete peace program that the people, warlike people of this world, reject. And without the peace program, there's no peace. But with the great catastrophe, the chastisement, everybody will turn to the peace program. They'll come with palm branches in their hands and say, God, we've had enough. So now I want to get on with the pyramid and show you the lords of the ages, or the lords of the Adamic cycle, which is the cycle of taking man from the animalistic type being to a highly spiritual type being that no longer will consider war as a means of settling arguments, but will sit around a peace table and go by the laws that God had sent down for peace upon this planet by a Davidic king.
This is solo alto flute. king's chamber of the Great Pyramid of Giza.
We're going to, from this point here, we're going to go up the, what we call the ascending passageway, which is this passageway here on the pyramid. It's this one going up, that's the ascending passageway. And then we're going to go into the grand gallery, which is the next part. This is called the ascending passageway, this is the descending passageway, and that's the grand gallery. And we're going to go into there because there's some very, very important things. The only thing that the Christians was able to get out of there was from this point here to the 0 point, and they found Jesus all right. So that, they knew about Jesus. But they didn't know what these red granite donuts, square donuts, were. That is, they are hollow and they surround the passageway. And they were put in there and become part of the passageway. But they didn't know why. Now the Christians came to the conclusion that every place there's red granite in the pyramid, this is in a spiritual occurrence. The passageways were made of limestone, polished, highly polished limestone blocks. But we come to a pyramid, we come to the granite, and they claim that the reason that granite was used, it was fire-borne, where the limestone was water-formed. It was sedimentation rock. But the other was formed by heat. And it represents the spiritual. They recognized that this point here was the 3 parts of Moses' covenant that we went through. But they didn't know what this was, or this was, or this was, or this was. And they figured from the 0 point to here, and they got the 1844 inches. But they didn't know what occurred in 1844. Piazza Smith found the 1844, and he found it in the 60s, 1860s or something like that. And he swore that if he would have found that date earlier, say back in the 1830s or something like that, he would swear that that would be the date for the return of Jesus Christ. But as Jesus Christ didn't come down out of the sky, he discounted it that this was the date for the return of Jesus Christ. But we found that 1844 in the Bible is the date for the return. But we went through when we were discovering the proofs. You remember that, don't you, Betsy?
Yep.
All right. So this is all a mystery. And then when they get to 1844, they recognize that this tremendous thing took place in the world. We started the industrial age. In fact, in 1844, on the very same day that the Bob made his proclamation, Morse, the inventor, sent the first telegram in the world. And the message that he sent is, see what God hath wrought. From that time on, communication just blossomed out. From the time of Christ to the time of 1844, the way you could send a message, the fastest you go was by Pony Express. And now with just the tip of a finger, the message would go over the wires from Baltimore to Washington on that day. So also other things happened. The train was rolling down the tracks, and an increase in speed of travel. The steamship, where they had to depend upon the wind to take us places. Now they had the steamship, and they kept going faster. And first thing you know, they did away with the wireless. They did with the wire telegraph, and they come with the wireless, and then with the radio and the television. And they went from the railroad train to the automobile, and then to the airplane, and now we put a man on the moon, and they're talking about putting one on Mars. All since 1844. And they asked Jesus, when is the close of the age? And he told them to turn to Daniel. We got that date from Daniel. Do you remember? That we got the date for the close of the age was in 1844. And it was March the 21st. And that's the date of the start of the Baha'i calendar. Now, they found that date. Now, the rest of the dates and what these meant. Now, the Christians could never figure out, because they don't believe that outside of Moses and Jesus, that nobody else was a prophet. They tried to fit these into some of the kings or some of the minor prophets in the Old Testament. Nothing fit for them, see? So they just discounted that they meant too much. But when I had the stone with 7 eyes before me, I was able to break the code of the Great Pyramid. And they didn't know what these overlays were. Now these overlays, we have a picture of them. You can see here that one is in more than the other, see? It gets narrower at the top, further up you go. But this is at an end down here, but the sides are the same way. Both sides, they are overlays. And they didn't know what they meant. And this is very, very important, because if you remember, we were talking about the harmonic convergence and the book by Hosea Hargrellis. And in there, it talked about the 9 lords of the time. Well, these represents the 9 manifestations of God. But this first one starting at Adam, way down at the, way down over here. Here we have it here. We have, or it's down here on this other one. That's Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus. All right. Now from Moses to here, they had that. So what about this? Well, the distance from the starting point, from here to here, is exactly 422.222 pyramid inches. But this doesn't mean anything. So what I did, I subtracted the distance from here to here from this overlay, the first overlay. And I got very, very interesting results. And I have this here. I'm going to put these up here on there. Yep, we put this up here, Betsy. And we're going to put this up here and subtracting, starting down here, we're going to subtract the length of the lower overlay up here. We're going to, which is 1,878 inches. We're going to subtract the distance from here to here, which is 422.222 inches. And it gives us 1,455.778 inches. Now that is the same figure that we gave you from here to here. which was the exodus of Moses from the 0 point. Remember, I just gave you at the start of this that from here to here is 1,455.778 inches, or March the 21st, 1456 BC, the date of the exodus of Moses. That is, the whole new nation started with Moses having taken the people of Israel out of Egypt. And they had never been able to figure out the exact date of the Exodus. Velinkowski said circa 1450, meaning about that date. Worcester, that gives the dating in the Bible, had it 1472 BC. But the pyramid dating gives the exact date for the Exodus. And the reason that we can say that this is the exact date is that the distance from here to here is the same as the distance from here to here subtracted from the Moses overlay. Both of them are exactly the same date. So one confirms the other. And it is more along, Velinkowski did a lot of research on this. And he got it right within 5 years, and he says it's somewhere in there. So the pyramid points out the exact date. And we're going to show the perfection of this pyramid dating in just a little while. So now what we did, the next one that followed Moses, the next manifestation that followed Moses was Krishna. So we subtract the distance from here to this square donut. That is, the length of that distance is 625.222 pyramid inches. And we subtract it from the Krishna overlay, which is 1,871 inches. We subtract the 625.222, and we get 1,245.778 inches, or March the 21st, 1246 BC. So we get the date of Krishna. And the people didn't know exactly. They thought it was about that time, but they didn't know exactly when he came. And this gives the date. Now we're going to show you something very spectacular here to prove all of this. Because we're going to take the distance from here to Zoroaster, which is 8,063.222 pyramid inches. And we're going to subtract it from the overlay of Zoroaster, which is 1,830 inches. Subtracting the 863.222 gives 999.778, or March the 21st, 1000 BC. This is very significant. In the Vesta, Zoroaster said that he lived 3,000 years before his birth. And he says that 3,000 years after his birth, the forces of light would win over the forces of darkness. He's talking about the start of the Adamic cycle in 4000 BC, and that is, if you go from 1000 BC and you add 3000 to it, you have 4000 BC. And that he was, in other words, what he was saying, that he was in the plan of God from the very beginning, at the time of Adam. And he says 3,000 years after his birth, the forces of light would win over the force of darkness, and this will be just about 12 and a half years from now, when all the people of the world, and we'll start the millennium, 1,000 years apiece. So we're so close to it, we can almost see it. Of course, a lot's going to happen in the intervening time. But there's another thing that was very important. There's a scored line in there. The scored line goes 3 inches in and 3 inches out on each side of the passageway. Each inch representing a millennium, or 1,000 years, would give you the 3,000 in and the 3,000 out. The 3,000 years from the time of Adam to the appearance of Zoroaster, and from the time of Zoroaster back to the year 2000. Also, this scored line is halfway between the ceiling and the floor of this passageway. He is the in-between Lord of the Ages. He's the in-between of the 9 manifestations of God of the Adamic cycle. Now, there's one other thing that Zoroaster said. He says, 1,000 years after my birth, you will see a star in the sky. He says, you will follow that star, and you'll come to a manger, and there you'll find me. We all know the nativity story. In the manger, the Magi, Zoroastrian priest, with the prophecy of Zoroaster in his hand, coming to the manger and bringing the gifts to the infant Jesus of frankincense, incense, and myrrh, gold. And we can't have the nativity scene without these Zoroastrian priests dressed in royal robes, on camels, coming from the east. It was exactly 1,000 years from the birth of Zoroaster to the birth of Jesus Christ. And the star in the sky led them to the manger. This is in the Bible. And it's in the Vesta that was written 1,000 years before the coming of Jesus. So here we prove our finding here. The distance from the start of this passageway to the start of this square donut, subtracted from this, the length of this overlay, and we get 1,000 BC. And 3,000 years from this to here, we will have the forces of light winning over the forces of darkness. And we go 3,000 years down this way, and we will have the start of the Adamic cycle, as given by the pyramid and in the Bible, of 4,000 BC. So we have something here that is so cotton-picking important, because we are having mathematics, the same type of mathematics that they put a man on the moon. Accurate, flawless mathematics to prove that this is the plan of God, that God had a plan, and that he was making man in his image through, he said, we will make man in our image, the word our, meaning the 9 lords of the ages. That is Adam, Moses, Krishna, Zoroaster, Buddha, and here's the stone for Jesus Christ and the stone for Muhammad in 1260 here. And we'll get into more of this later. But the most important thing is we have just proved the scientific, spiritual aspect, where before, when we started this, we gave the aspects, the physical aspects, such as pi and the distance from the earth to the sun and the diameter of the earth and the solar year. All of that, the scientific stuff is in the pyramid. But that was only to give it credence, so that God's plan, once the 9th Lord of the age comes, the second Messiah that establishes God's kingdom and 1,000 years of peace in the world, so we'll be able to recognize him and accept him. So we have here the most important thing that has come to light, not only in the 20th century, but in all centuries. The promised one of the ages is here. He's come. He's given a revelation. He was a descendant of David. He fulfilled the prophecy. We went through the prophecies. His name was prophesied. The address where he was going to come. The date for his coming was given in the Bible. All these are given in the Bible. And that he's going to establish the kingdom of God on earth. All of this is given in the Bible. And we're going to get into that more. So then we go up there and we take the distance from the starting point to Buddha's square donut. and we subtract it from the next overlay. And the distance from the start of that passageway, the start of the overlay is 1,855 inches, and the distance from the start of the passageway from here to Buddha is 1,101.222 pyramid inches. So we subtract the 1,101.22 inches, and we get 754.778, or March the 21st, 755 BC. There are the Buddhists are all divided. Some have Buddha coming 9,900 BC, some coming 500 BC. But the evidences of the spread of it to India and so forth points it in closer to what the pyramid gives it, the 755 BC. So here we have the dates. Now the important thing is this, that in the past, the Christians will accept Moses and Christ. The Christians could never unite the world. If you go over there and tell the Chinese that Buddha is a false prophet, they'll say, hey, get out of here, go home. It's just like if a Buddhist should happen to come over to America and go in the Catholic Church and tell them that Jesus was a false prophet or he wasn't a messenger of God. The Christians know he is. And the Buddhists and the Chinese know that Buddha is. How are they going to get together? How are they going to become united? No other way but by absolute positive proof. Absolutely positive proof. Scientific, just like if you put two apples on the table and count them, you got 4 apples. There's no difference. And what is important about this? God gave you the intellect, okay? So that you're not fed a line in order for him to hijack you and take the money away from you. You can decide with your intellect what is true and what is false. When for mathematics you go to the store and you buy a peck of potatoes, you might come out with 1 pound or 2 pounds, 3 pounds, if people don't know how many pounds in a peck, you know? If you don't have mathematics, you're going to get cheated, whether it's in this physical life or in the spiritual life. That's why we have it. We're going to get cheated. We're going to get hijacked. People are going to take our money away from us. And what do they give you in the return for it? They don't give you salvation like they say. They give you some beautiful organ music and some beautiful singer. You ever see Tammy Faye and Jim Baker? Oh, they are gorgeous. You get a nice show. And you go over to their church, and there they have a Disneyland affair, a Ferris wheel and rides and parks, and they get something for their money. At least Jim Baker gives them something for their money. Falwell doesn't give them anything. He said all of them claim salvation. None of them give them salvation, but Jim Baker at least gives them some pleasure. See? But this isn't what religion is about. Religion is in order to be able to recognize God's plan, put it into effect for our benefit. If we follow God's laws and teachings, we wouldn't be at war. We wouldn't have all the convulsions in the world. We wouldn't have all the disease and poverty. And this is why this is important, so that we can arrive at the truth. Now the next thing is, here is the stone for Jesus. Okay? And by the way, the stone isn't in the pyramid anymore. When Al Mummum come in there, he found the stone laying down here. He left it laying there, and when the different other pyramidologists came, such as Piazza Smith and Davidson and the others, it was down there. Then one of them finally took it all out of there, and it's on a pile outside of the pyramid at the doorway, you know, in the ground. Well, why is the stone of Jesus missing? Well, Jesus said that he was the stone that the builders rejected. And how did they happen to reject it? Well, after the way they built this pyramid, they put one layer of stone and another, see? And they're maybe about 4 feet high, each one of the layers, approximately. And when they got up here, now this is the 49th layer, this bottom part, and this top part is the 50th layer. But when they got up here and they laid this on here, at that time, everything in the pyramid was sealed. This was sealed, this was sealed, this was sealed, and nothing. It was all sealed. But after they got and these weigh about 95 tons each, and there's 9 of them. And they were laid on there perfect. Then there was an earthquake, a great earthquake. And they needed to go in there to see if there was any damage, if anything these dates are monkeyed with the earthquake. What are they going to do? Well, they decided not to interrupt taking that off, so they drilled a hole from here into here. And then they descended down in this passageway, and they went in here, and they found that one of these beams had cracked. Well, now these people that built this pyramid had a cement that's stronger than rock. And they patched it up with their cement, and that patch is there today and is stronger than the rock itself. Remember when I started this, that the different blocks in the pyramid, they have a cement that's invisible and they can't separate at the joint. But you can break the stones, but you can't separate them at the joints. So strong is that cement. So they cemented up, and then they came down here, and of course this was all plugged up. There was 12 limestone blocks from here up to here, so they couldn't get into there. And they wanted to get down there and see if everything else, they wanted to go in this chamber, so they had to break out that rock, that stone. That's the stone that the builders rejected. The builders that built the pyramid broke it all off. They let it in a heap down here. Then they went into here and they found this was all right. And they went down here and found this is all right. And of course there was stones from here to here. They couldn't examine that. They weren't interested in that. But they came down here and examined this. Okay? So they found everything was all right. So then they went back out and they finished the pyramid. So this is the stone that the builders rejected. This is the 0 point. All right, now we blow this point up. You come up this passageway here, and there's a little scored line, 3.5 inches from the start of the grand gallery. And this gives us the at this point here is March the 21st, 27 AD. That is from the 0 point to that scored line is March the 21st, 18. And then if we go up to the entrance line, we get December the 21st, 30 AD. And this is when Jesus started his ministry. It was 29.772 pyramid inches from the 0 point to the entrance. And then if you take a plumb bob, dropping it down, this is 3 inches in from this one, or 3.5 inches in. So we get March the 24th, 34 AD, when Jesus was crucified. It was 33.222 inches. Jesus was 33 years of age when he was crucified in 34 AD. And we found these exact dates, if you remember, in the Bible. Exactly, these dates are found in the Bible given by Daniel. And so, who's the liar? These two, the pyramid and the Bible, is in conformity. Exactly. Now these things didn't take place maybe a week or so apart. These things were so accurate. They said that the measurements were so accurate that there wasn't a hair breadth deviation in this. And when you're measuring something a block or so long, and you only get a hair breadth deviation, they say it's perfect. These are perfect. Now mathematics is perfect, and one of the most perfect of all mathematics is measurement. They can measure these things with jeweler's calipers. That you make a little fine watch and things like this. So this is the perfection why the pyramid cannot be reproduced today. The perfection that is in this pyramid cannot be reproduced. Of course, we explained it was the biggest building in the world in mass. At the time of the start of the 20th century, it was the biggest building in height in the world. So the perfection in here is exquisite. So then we want to get the date for Jesus. So here we have Jesus. The length of this overlay of Jesus is 1,848.4 pyramid inches. Jesus give in Revelation and in several other places in the Bible, in Daniel, the date of 1260. Muhammad came in he come in 612.668 date, and if you subtract the 1260 plus the date of Muhammad, you get 33.222 for the age of Jesus when he was crucified, or March the 21st, 34 AD. The same dates that we got from this. The exact same dates. Proving Jesus beyond a doubt. Now a lot of people are leaving Christianity. And I don't blame them. When you go in the church and you get a lot of baloney, you know, you get sick of being fed baloney all the time. Baloney might be all right. See? But you get a lot of, all you get is baloney, you're going to get indigestion. And one thing about baloney, no matter how thin you slice it, it's still baloney. So we are coming up with something here that a person must have to be way out in left field, not to want to accept the type of perfection. Now God, if he can create you and your body is so perfect, all the nerves and everything in the right place. He didn't put your eyes down in your butt, you know what I mean? Where you sit, you know what I mean? He got everything in the right place in your body. Now if he can create that perfection of your body, he can send his teachers to this earth at the exact time on his schedule when he started the Adamic cycle. And the reason for this is so to prove that these are the ones that he sent. To prove that these are the ones that God sent. And just like that, we were reading Jose how do you say it, Betsy? Arguelles. He has these same dates in the pyramid in Mexico, or in Central America, the Mayan pyramids. Now, I mean, all over the world, we have the same dates. The Buddhists have these dates. The Christian and the Jewish calendar has them. The pyramid has them. There's no need for us to be at war with people because saying I'm right and you're wrong. It's just like the student in third grade telling the person in the fourth grade, oh, you're all off. Only third grade is the perfect grade. See? Second grade, we can't go by that, that's pass. See? But fourth grade, that's bunk. See? The people in fourth grade would put down the people in third grade and put down the people in fifth grade because they say that this is the true grade. The sun of Tuesday is just about ready to go down here in the west in a little while. Tomorrow morning the sun of Wednesday is going to rise. Tuesday and Wednesday is the same sun, but coming at a different time and a different point of the zodiac, of the horizon. But it's still the same sun. When Zoroaster said that 1,000 years from my birth you'll find me. This isn't, he's not referring to the person of Zoroaster. This is God talking. Through his mouthpiece, Zoroaster, in 1,000 years you'll find me, another mouthpiece, giving another message from God. The Logos, the thought of God expressed in a revelation, in the Word. So we have these different manifestations, and here is the one that Jesus, that we have just set. That is, we have the dates for the coming of Jesus, both in the Bible and in the Great Pyramid. The next thing we want to do is that Muhammad. Now Jesus said that nobody comes to the Father except through me. Jesus is the last one at the end of this passageway. And any of these here have to go past Jesus in the passageway to get up here to the Father. But Muhammad came 622 years after Jesus, so he couldn't put him in here exactly. So God placed Muhammad down here in what is called the grotto, and this is the stone for Muhammad. And it's sitting on a precipice. One side of the rock is over a precipice and the other is on solid ground. And this stands for the two sects of Islam. One is the Shiite and the other is the Sunni. The Sunni was perverse Islam, where the Shiite retained the imams. And that was on solid ground. And the date is 1, 2, 6, and there's an extra space there, makes it 0, as 1260. It's the same 1260 that Jesus said in the Bible, in the book of Revelation. He talks about the coming of one in the 11th and the 12th chapter of the book of Revelation. He talks about the coming of Muhammad. And in the book of Matthew, or in the book of John, in the 14th chapter, he calls Muhammad by name, and this name was translated into the Greek as Paraclete, and into the English Bible as the Comforter. But Jesus also gives the date for the coming of Muhammad. And the pyramid gives the date 1260 AD, after Jesus. So, also, in this passageway, that is from here, the passageway itself, from here to here, this isn't an overlay, this is the passageway. We have 1,299.122 inches to a scored line. It appears someplace in here. And then you have 5,820 inches, which makes the length of the entire passageway, and it's 1882 inches long. And this gives the date of Muhammad in Muhammad here, and this is the date from the Muhammad to the Bab. So we have the date of Muhammad, we have the date of all the manifestations of God so far. So the Christians measured from here to here, and they come to 1844, and they were befuddled. Now they knew that this was a spiritual passageway, that everything in this passageway pertained to people sent from God. But when they get this way, they said, this is the industrial age. And then they start measuring it to see the different things that happened in the secular world, such as World War I, World War II, and all these things. Nothing jived. It was just, they were guessing, you know what I mean? It doesn't pertain to the industrial age. It pertains to the coming of the kingdom. They know that this is called the king's chamber, and it signifies the coming of the Davidic king, the second Christ, the coming of Baha'u'llah. One of the things they did just about right, as each inch represented a year in these passageways, at this point they said, due to the fact that they're at the purpose of the passageway, which is these two rooms, whatever they happen to represent, we couldn't go by 1 inch representing a year, we make it 1 inch representing a month. But they use a 30-day month. and they couldn't get anything right. At this particular point, the coming of the Bob, he made a new calendar, and he made 19 days to a month and 19 months to a year. Therefore, each inch represents 19 plus 4 1/4 intercalary days. By using this new measurement, the distance from here to here and the distance from here to the bottom of this stone, or the starting of this stone here. Now this is red granite. This is your limestone block. And when we get here, we get to something that's spiritual. And the number of inches from here to here, that is from here to here, this is a little bit bigger, is 36 inches. And from here to here is 126.1609523 pyramid inches. If we divide that by 30, if we add 36 to that, it gives us 1,609.523 pyramid inches. Okay, to go through the mathematics here, you divide that by your measurement of 19.2237, that is the 1 month, and you get 1851.58, the 65747 years, or August the 28th, 1852-80. That brings us to the red granite leaf, or the start of the red granite passageway. This is when Baha'u'llah, that is the Spirit of God, descended upon Baha'u'llah. If you remember in the Bible, after Jesus was baptized by John, he come up out of the River Jordan, and then the heavens opened and the Spirit of God descended upon Jesus as a dove. Buddha under the bo tree of India. Moses at the burning bush. But Baha'u'llah, it descended upon him when he was in the Sea of Chao. And it gives the date here for this Baha'u'llah, this is recorded in history when this occurrence took place. And it's exactly given there in the pyramid. Then we go and we add the distance of that from here to here to here, and we come up with April the 21st. April the 21st of 1863. And this is when Baha'u'llah entered into the Garden of Roses, or the Garden of Rizwan in Baghdad, and for 12 days following that he made his proclamation to the world. The people of Baghdad turned out in this garden to hear Baha'u'llah tell him that he is the one that he's going to make. So you have, this is the number of inches and everything else leading up, 1843 plus the 19 in this, that brings us to April the 21st, 1863 for his proclamation. Now these are exact measurements within the hair's breadth of this. It not only gives the day in which he made his proclamation, but if you want to be exact, it would only not only give the hour, but the exact minute when he opened his mouth to proclaim himself. This is how accurate God is. Precise. And this is why the pyramid. Now, the trouble is with other revelations that are given and they're written down, the manuscripts can be altered. The words changed. Or they can get lost and somebody can replace them with something else. And a lot of things go screwy sometimes. But you can't get in there and shrink rock and expand rock. You can't alter this. It is stayed there from the time it was built and 5,500 years ago. Just as perfect as it was when it was built. And one thing about mathematics, it's an international language. If we speak in other languages, you have translations, and they might change the meanings. Like they change in from Hebrew to Aramaic to Greek to finally around to English. it's maybe something altogether different. And some of the scriptures, the apostles wrote their gospels maybe many years after Jesus had gone on, from memory. So here we have God given it in a concrete manner, the coming of the glory of God, Baha'u'llah, prophesied in the Bible. Okay? The ninth Lord of the time. He concludes the Adamic cycle and starts a new cycle. Then we will have other manifestations coming in 1,000 years. So here we have the proof of Baha'u'llah. Now I want to back up a little bit here and show you something else that is very, very important. And that is, we'll go back here to the stone here of this passageway going down here at this particular corner. Okay? And we have it on this. And this is the introduction of the polytheistic God, the beginning of the rejection of Jesus ben David by the believers. That is from the time that he was baptized by John to the start of this precipice was the length of time for him rejected. And then from this point to this point is we come to the Council of Nicaea and the acceptance of the doctrine of three gods in one, complete control given to the Antichrist at this particular point here. So therefore it shows not only the coming of Christ but the corruption of Christianity, the dates in which they were corrupted. And it was corrupted by the pagans entering Christianity by Paul bringing the message to the Gentiles. The other apostles did not bring their message to the Gentiles. Peter and the other apostles were told that they must bring it to the lost tribes of Israel. And this is another whole story. We could spend some time going into this. And James and Peter and them, they wondered what happened to them. They were going to the lost tribes of Israel. But they didn't regather them. But Baha'u'llah, when he was taken in chains from where his birthplace in Tehran to Israel, he passed through the countries where the 10 tribes and the 2 tribes were. And these are the people that became Baha'is, the blood descendants of these, of the lost tribes of Israel and the 2 tribes of Judah. And he brought the 12 tribes of Israel to Israel as a prisoner in chains. These people followed him. This is miraculous that this has taken place. He regathered the 12 tribes of Israel, and remember the temple that Moses made in the desert. It was called a tabernacle. He had a tent divided in 2, and then finally Solomon built a building of stone called the temple at Jerusalem. Well, that is a replica, that temple that Solomon built, that Moses gave, of what was inside of the pyramid that God had designated. We have the sanctuary, and the Bab fulfills the return of the sanctuary, and Baha'u'llah, the Holy of Holies. The one that Moses built says it was an archetypical temple. It was a temple, a replica of the archetypical temple. In other words, it was one made by stone. In Hebrews it says that he could not, Jesus said he could not put his covenant in the one made by stone. So in Hebrews it said that he put his covenant in the temple in heaven for the salvation of the people. And he purified it not with the blood of sheep and goats, but with his own blood. But Baha'u'llah came, and the Bab made his proclamation here, and then starting here is when the martyrdoms of the Babis took place, and from here to here, there was 10,000 martyrs taking place. And if you turn to Jude, it says, then he will come with 10,000 saints. And the 10,000 saints are the 10,000 martyrs of the Babi faith, including the Bab himself. purifying the sanctuary with his blood and the blood of his followers. The Bab means door or gate. He was the forerunner of Baha'u'llah, to prepare the way for Baha'u'llah. And he came to Iran, and he exploded all the myths that the clergy had put into this religion. And thus he was martyred as well as his followers martyred, because he exposed the perversion of the Shiite religion that was the right religion, but by the time of the Bab it had become very, very perverse. So the Bab, of course, was martyred. And then Baha'u'llah receives the Holy Spirit, and then we come to his proclamation, and here is an Ark of the Covenant. If you remember that when Nebuchadnezzar destroyed Jerusalem, took the Jews in captivity to Babylon, he took the Ark of the Covenant with him, and it became lost. When they rebuilt the temple a second time, they didn't have the covenant to put in it. And from that point on, the Jews were apostate. That God gave them through Moses a way for the removal of their sins. And that is, there was an Ark of the Covenant, and it had to be in the temple, or the temple was not able to remove their sin. And they've been in the position of the curse, the second stone in this that we had already given you that. Okay? So here we have the Ark of the Covenant of Moses. This Ark of the Covenant of Baha'u'llah is exactly the same dimensions as, that is, the Ark of the Covenant of Moses is the same dimensions as the one in here. It's 144,000 cubic pyramid inches, which also represents the elect that is going to come about, or start coming about, at the harmonic conversion on August the 15th or 16th of this year, when they start having the 144,000. It's 144,000 cubic inches. I don't know if you can see that there. It's 144,000 cubic inches. We have another picture of it. It's a little bit bigger. I think. There it is here. 144,000 cubic inches. The pyramid there, the dimensions and the dimensions and dimensions. If you take these dimensions, now they're all up there. Ark of the Covenant, 144,000 cubic inches. And these are the 144,000 will come under this covenant. If they're not under this covenant, they're not the 144,000. Therefore, they're going to have to recognize Baha'u'llah in order to come under the covenant. Now, how did Moses happen to build a tabernacle in the desert after this archetypical temple? Well, it says in the Bible that he says, I give you a model for the building of your temple, or your the tent that he had in the desert, what is it? The tabernacle. Yeah. So he says, I give it to you in order to know how to build it. Well, Moses was raised in the palace of the Pharaoh. And right outside his back window was this great pyramid. And he knew what was inside of it. And this is the type of temple that he was shown how to build. That was just a temple to take place until time brings us to the coming of Bab and Baha'u'llah. And this is the fulfillment of the temple. This was an interim temple that was finally destroyed, and it would never be rebuilt again, because the temple is the Bab and Baha'u'llah. And the Ark of the Covenant Baha'u'llah, in this covenant, he establishes his descendancy, which comes all the way back from David, forever. There will always be a descendant of David sitting on the throne of David forever. The covenant breakers said we need to get rid of the Davidic kingship because Abdu'l-Baha said he's the guardian, and the guardian guards the faith, and we want to corrupt it and pervert it and take it over and steal the money and to take over the membership and the institutions. And the reason that they did this is that they thought the administration of Shoghi Effendi was going to become a world government. And therefore they would be at the head of the world government. And they'd rule the world. They're no different from Napoleon or Hitler or Alexander the Great. They were all thinking of one thing, power. So the Baha'i membership went along by their baloney again. But God had the seventh angel up his sleeve, ready to blow his trumpet, and at the exact time, on April the 29th of this year, 1987, I blew the trumpet by sending out a release that will be picked up by the large papers. It'll go into the Associated Press. It'll go into the United Press International, be on the television, and it'll be announced at the harmonic conversion. And these people are looking for what? Quetzalcoatl, the Coca-Can, and Jesus. They say it's all the same person. And this will all be on the air. Now it's up to these people to recognize the promised one. And let's see how sincere they are. Do they just want to have a dance on that date? Or are they actually sincere to recognize the promised one? And we will have it. That's the way it will be. So we have here the plan of God to bring us to the revelation of God. Now we have something more that's very important here, is that this establisher, this seventh angel, is also prophesied in the pyramid. This seventh angel fulfilled the 3rd chapter of Zechariah. And he showed me Joshua the high priest standing before the angel of the Lord, and Satan standing at his right hand to resist him. This took place on April the 21st of 1963. Abdu'l-Baha said that this seventh angel would come exactly 100 years after Baha'u'llah's proclamation of April the 21st, 1863. And he fulfills the prophecy of the 1335 days of January of Daniel. And Abdu'l-Baha says you add this to the victory of Muhammad. The 1335, and the victory of Muhammad was in 728 AD, and this gives you April the 21st of 1963. But we've already gone through that. Okay? So at that date, I was opposed by Satan, and I have the statement there by the Guardian to that effect, but we already have it in the record. And the Lord said to Satan, the Lord rebuke thee, O Satan, even the Lord that has chosen Jerusalem rebuke thee. Is this not a brand plucked out of the fire? And the Guardian rebuked this Satan that attacked me on that date. Now Joshua was clothed with a filthy garment and stood before the angel. That is, he was in the Montana State Prison, and the type of beef that he had, that I've already got in the record, was that of a dirty garment. And now Joshua was clothed with filthy garments and stood before the angel. And he answered and spake unto those that stood before him, saying, Take away the filthy garment from him. And unto him he said, Behold, I have caused thine iniquity to pass from thee, and I will clothe thee with a change of raiment. Today I have a white aura. And I think here that Wind or Francis says that she saw it. as other people have seen it. And the beef that I had was a congealed up beef by my enemies to get me out of the way, that I've already gone into detail previously. And I said, let them set a fair mitre upon his head. From that date on, I knew what everything was in the scriptures. Then I was able to break the code to this pyramid. I had an angel that visited me at that time in the prison. And from that time on, I had the fair mitre on my head that I was able to know and understand what I'm telling you here today. Without this, I wouldn't be able to do it. Because this is what I'm telling you is not in the Baha'i religion. It's in no religion. Nobody else has this. Only I have this. Nobody knows what the pyramid was or is, even today, except those that I've taught. Okay? Now these drawings here were done by Jerome Hellman, who was with me in prison. Okay? And this chart here was done by Jerome Hellman. But he worked with me, and I showed him, and we broke the code of the pyramid, and he's the one that put it on paper for me, but I gave him all the dates and everything else for him to do that. And then it said, and the angel of the Lord protested against Giza, saying, thus saith the Lord of hosts, if thou wilt walk in my ways, and if thou wilt keep my chart, then thou shalt also judge my house, and thou shalt also keep my court, and I will give thee places to walk among those that stand by. He says, hear now, Joshua the high priest, thou and thy fellows that sit before thee. For they are men wondered at. For behold, I will bring forth my servant the branch. And of course, Baha'u'llah appoints his son, Abdu'l-Baha, to be his successor, and he called him the most great branch. And then Abdu'l-Baha, in his will and testament, he made his successors called the guardians, which were referred to as branches. And the covenant breakers threw the branches out, violating the covenant. And therefore he has this Joshua here. And in the Catholic Bible, it doesn't say Joshua, it says Jesus. Jesus and Joshua is the same word. I have a Catholic Bible here. We could read it from the Catholic Bible. It says, he showed me Jesus, the high priest. Now Jesus in the Bible, besides being the Christ, he was also a high priest after the order of Melchizedek, not after the order of Aaron. Therefore, he wasn't able to put his covenant in that temple built by hand, because in that temple only a high priest after the order of Aaron could go into. And that temple was built by hands. Therefore, he placed his covenant in the temple in heaven. But Baha'u'llah's covenant is placed in the temple here on earth. You know what I mean? The kingdom of God on earth. And the covenant breakers have done away with this. And therefore, this Joshua reestablishes this branch. And this is my mission, to reestablish the branch in the world. And he said, for behold, upon one stone I have laid before Joshua, upon one stone shall have 7 eyes. And the prison that I was in had a stone wall around it with 7 watchtowers. And no matter which way I turned, I had that stone with 7 eyes before me. And then we said one place, it said that nobody would know he has a name, when we talked about in the 19th chapter of Revelation about the man in the white horse. Well, the man in the white horse is a knight, and I was knighted by Abdu'l-Baha, and I had this stone with 7 eyes before me. And it says here, upon one stone shall have 7 eyes, I have engraving thereof, says the Lord of hosts. And he said that this Joshua on the white horse, or this knight on the white horse, has many diadems, or many titles. And then he has a title that no one knows but himself. And the most important thing is now coming up here. He says, I will remove the iniquity of that land in 1 day. And my name is the land, Leland. The iniquity of Joshua and the iniquity of the land is the same iniquity. Nobody knew that this land meant a person. But it says in the 19th chapter of Revelation that he has a name that nobody knows but him. And nobody else would know it unless he has that name and he fulfilled these prophecies. I had the stone with 7 eyes before me. I wore the dirty garment. I was opposed by Satan, the date given by Daniel. And I had a fair mitre on my head. Otherwise you wouldn't know all this stuff. Now somebody just can't pick this out of the air. Nobody's been able to put this together. And I or nobody else would be able to put it together if they wasn't the promised one. Only the promised one can do this. The seventh angel. And the newspapers are going to proclaim me next month. They're looking for the return of Jesus. And is Jesus here? Now how do we know? Okay, Baha'u'llah makes his proclamation on April the 21st, 1863 in the 4 walls. There are 100 red granite blocks. Now we didn't make it red here because you wouldn't be able to read the writing. But that's red and this side is red too. And you add it to the date of Baha'u'llah's proclamation, and you get April the 21st of 1963 when I was opposed by Satan and I began my ministry. When I had the visitation in the prison and I found out that I was the promised one, I didn't want it. And I refused to tell anybody. Well, finally my wife told me, she says, you've got to tell me. And that was several months after I knew it. So I made her promise that she wouldn't tell anybody. And she kept the secret, she wouldn't. But in 1971, on April the 29th of 1971, one of the inmates in the prison, a man by the name of Harry Straub, who had been reading the Bible, he came up to me and he says, Dr. Jensen, he says, you are the Joshua of the 3rd chapter of Zechariah. And he says, this prison wall surrounding it is the stone with 7 eyes. I says, Harry, I didn't tell you that. He says, no, he said he had a visitation. Just like when they asked Jesus, you know, he asked him, who did they say I am? And they said, you're a great man, you're a teacher, or something else. Then he asked the apostles who you are, and Peter says, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. He said, Peter, I didn't tell you that, but your Father who art in heaven. Okay. The same thing happened here. And that April the 29th of 1971, the date of Baha'u'llah's proclamation was April the 21st of 1863. He had 108 red granite blocks on the floor. You add that to 1863, you get 1971, April the 21st. But Harry Straub told me on April the 29th, which Baha'u'llah had already made it a holy day. It's one of the 9 holy days in the Baha'i year. But there so happens there's 9 beams on there, and on the first day, April the 21st is the first day of Rizwan. April the 29th is the 9th day of Rizwan. And that gives us April the 29th of 1971, when I told Harry Straub, yes, I am the Joshua, or the Jesus, to come to establish my Father's kingdom, Baha'u'llah. I'm a knight. And I says, I'm revealing the things that the people need to know so everybody can become Baha'i. Without these proofs, never would they all become Baha'i. There's too many loopholes. But I close up all of the loopholes. Every last thing is fulfilled with what I'm telling in my part of it. Abdul Baha didn't go into the pyramid. He didn't go into. He told us that. He told us about the 1963 date, but he didn't say it was going to be Leland Jensen, or that Leland Jensen was going to be in the prison. That was up to me to have to be in there. Now, I didn't go down to that prison and knock on the door and say, let me in, I'm Joshua, I'm Jesus. You can bet your boots I didn't. I didn't want to go in there. I knew that I was hoaxed. It was a big hoax that put me in there. And I didn't know why I was in there. Then I find I was fulfilling prophecies. Now, I wasn't the only one in prison. Jesus was in prison before he went on the cross. Peter was in prison. Paul was in prison for 2 years. go way back to the time of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. The 12th son of Jacob, Joseph, was in prison for 2 years. Baha'u'llah, 40 years. After Baha, 40 years. The Bab was in prison. God has a habit of putting his promised ones in prison. I don't know why. Now, I would have just as well had anybody else go into that prison and be Joshua. There was no pleasant trip in there. See? But if it was anything else, 10,000 people or 100,000 people would have tried to fulfill it, you know. If they knew that the land was the name of the one, everybody would have called their sons Leland, you know, to try to fulfill prophecy. It's the calling card. I gave him the name. At the address, the stone with 7 eyes, and when I got it in the script that this is between 2 mountains of brass, also prophesied in Zechariah. At the date, I was opposed by Satan, and the other date, I made my proclamation. Now, why? Why is this all red granite block? All the red granite blocks in that Holy of Holies prophesy of me. And as Baha'u'llah gave this revelation and gave the covenant, and all the Baha'is throughout the world went against this covenant, with the passing of Mason Remy, there was no Baha'is left in the world, except the knight and his wife. I've raised up a whole new contingent of Baha'is. And shortly I'll have 144,000. When I have them, then the bombs are going to drop. And all this rubbish out here is for the fire. For the fire. All the rubbish. All the things that people conjure up in their mind about religion. When I was over in the islands, I asked the islanders, I says, well, what do you think about America? And you know what they told me? He says, well, we picture America as a great big factory with a great big crank that turns and turns out missionaries. He says, one is Baptist, another is Presbyterian, another is Catholic, another is Jehovah's Witness. He says, thousands of them, thousands and thousands of them. All the concepts. And since that time, with the New Thought people and all the other things that have come up, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So we're going to have the kingdom. Now, we have some rooms up here. There's 4 winds of destruction. They'll come one following another. And the first one is the thermonuclear war. He's got disease and starvation, which will, of course, accompany that. But the next one will be a comet or a meteor hitting the earth. And this is prophesied in the Old Testament, especially by Daniel, and in the New Testament, and it's prophesied in the Quran. And Baha'u'llah says a meteor would come and drive the covenant breakers out of Mount Carmel. Long before this ever took place, you know. The next will be a great sort of a revolution, worldwide revolution. But it'll be more than that, that there'll be the earth-shifting crust. And this is very important because after the radiation and things like that, the tidal waves will wash all that radiation out, you know. And then the last one, well, that's the last one, the earth-shifting crust. So we have here these things that are going to take place, and then we're going to have the kingship. Now, this is a little room up on top. It has 24 marble stones, 12 on this side and 12 on this side, and they go this way, see? I mean, they go like this, you know. See? And then has 2 sides, one on this side and one on that side. One stands for the kingship and the other one is the universal house of justice of Baha'u'llah. We will have the kingdom of God by the end of the century. This will be in operation. Everything is given in God's plan, just like when the architect made this house, everything where it's going to be, where this door is going to be, where the window is going to be, where the fireplace is going to be, where the toilet's going to be. He didn't put the toilet in the middle of the front room. It wouldn't be appropriate. It's like it wouldn't be appropriate to have eyes on the seat of your pants. See? Everything was in its proper place. Well, God is the greatest of planners. He decided to take man when the brain was just emerging from the standpoint where it's starting to think in the abstract, to bring a whole new phase to mankind, and that is the kingdom of God on earth. But he had to take them through a series of 9 lords of the ages, or 9 manifestations of God, 9 grades in school, Baha'u'llah bringing the university education of religion. And this is what I'm establishing. Now, I'm not a prophet. I'm not a manifestation. I'm like Paul or Peter, or like Joshua in the time of Moses, or like Ali in the time of Muhammad. They were the establishers. And Abdu'l-Baha explains this in Some Answer Questions. I believe you are reading Some Answer Questions now, aren't you? And if you'll get there, you'll find on page 66 he talks about the 7th angel. He's talking about me. He says he will establish the kingdom. So the message of the Great Pyramid, and I have maybe I've got a half a dozen more lectures on the Great Pyramid. But people are going to watch this on the videotape. I wanted to get to the point. We could go into the construction date. And very quickly we would give the date of the construction. There are 36 blocks forming the ceiling. They're like this, you know, one on top of the other. There's 36 of them. Each one of these rocks represents a century. So that makes 3,600 years. 3,600 years, and if you plus the length of this overlay, which is 1,834 inches long, you get 5,434. As this is a 6,000 year period from Adam until the end of the century, we subtract the 5,434 and it equals 566. It is 566 years after Adam, that's AK, or after the start of the Adamic cycle. Or June 12th, that is the 1339, subtract that, gives you 3433.553, or June the 12th, 3434 BC for the construction of the pyramid. Now, I was able to figure that out. Nobody knew when the pyramid was constructed. I figured it out when from this, while I had the stone 7 eyes before me. And then sometime after I was out of the pyramid, I got a hold of Davidson's book. It wasn't in print when I was in the prison, and I wasn't acquainted with his book. And he took some triangulation, and he has it here, and he comes exactly with exactly the same cotton picking date that I got from here, 3434 BC, for the construction date of the pyramid. He was 20 years at the Great Pyramid. His book is one of the greatest books of the pyramid, and he has this date of June 21st, 34 BC. The same date that I had gotten up here. So the pyramid is perfect. Now, a lot of people think the pyramid is some place to sharpen your razor blades, or to preserve milk, or some place to feel comfortable, make little portable pyramids. They have all kinds of different concepts about the Great Pyramid. But God made this pyramid perfect in order to show you his plan for making man in his image. Now, not everybody's going to accept this, you know. But then there has to be somebody for the fire, you know. They're all not going to come into the kingdom. If all of them come into the kingdom with all the corruptions and perversions, it's like bringing a bull in a china shop. They corrupt it and pervert it and destroy it. Only the pure of heart are going into the kingdom. And what's a pure of heart? It's one, when he sees the truth, he's pure of heart enough to accept it. One that doesn't have a pure heart, no matter if he knows it's the truth, he'll say, no, I want something else. And they're for the fire. You got the freedom of choice. Turn to God and his plan, or join the rest of them in the fire. And this concludes my series on that has been going on. I think there's about 26 hours of it. I hope everybody starts at the beginning and goes through this pyramid.